Naruto, the vessel of the Nine Tails, forged through pain, guided by purpose. But what if fate had taken a different turn? What if, during the sealing of the Nine Tails, Naruto was marked, not by a curse, but by power once held by a god? The Karma Seal, now etched into the arm of the Child of Prophecy. Golden chakra, and now together with a stained crimson. Kurama's heart fused with Otsutsuki power. This is a different Naruto. This is... What if Naruto had ISSHIKI'S karma?
The night sky above Konoha bled crimson as the nine-tailed fox's chakra saturated the air. Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, stood atop Gemabunta with sweat beading on his brow. His newborn son, Naruto, lay wailing on the ceremonial altar he had hastily prepared. "Kushina, hold on just a little longer," he whispered, though his wife couldn't hear him from this distance. Her chakra chains strained to restrain the rampaging beast as its tails whipped violently against the barrier she had erected. But they weren't alone in that apocalyptic tableau. Perched on a distant cliff face, nearly invisible against the chaos of the night, a pale figure observed the unfolding tragedy with cold, calculating eyes. Isshiki Otsutsuki activated his Byakugan, the veins around his eyes bulging as he peered through the tempest of chakra and destruction. "So, this is the child," he murmured, his gaze fixed on the infant. Remarkable, through his enhanced vision, Isshiki could see what no other being present could perceive, the unmistakable chakra signature within the child. The resonance of Ashura's reincarnation pulsed like a beacon, intertwined with another extraordinary potential that marked the infant as something special even among the exceptional. "The child of prophecy," Isshiki said, his thin lips curving into a smile that held no warmth. How fortuitous! In all his millennia of existence, he had never encountered such perfect timing. The chaos of the Nine Tails attack provided the ideal cover, and the child, newly born, chakra coils still forming, represented the perfect vessel. A vessel that, with proper cultivation, could withstand the full power of an Otsutsuki god. Isshiki moved with inhuman speed, his body flickering through the battlefield. Shinobi fell around him, crushed by the Nine Tails rampage or struck down by its corrosive chakra. None detected his presence as he approached the altar where Minato was preparing the 8-trigram seal. Time seemed to slow as Isshiki extended his hand toward the infant. Minato, entirely focused on the complex sealing jutsu that would imprison the Nine Tails within his son, remained unaware of the pale hand hovering over Naruto's tiny palm. "You will be my legacy," Isshiki whispered as his finger pressed against the child's skin. A pulse of otherworldly energy flowed from Isshiki into the infant. A diamond-shaped mark, black as the void between stars, materialized on Naruto's right palm. The mark pulsed once, twice, then seemed to sink beneath the skin, becoming nearly invisible except for the faintest outline. Isshiki closed his eyes, initiating the possession process that would eventually allow his consciousness to overtake the child's body. But something unexpected happened. As his essence attempted to take root within Naruto, it encountered resistance, not from the infant's undeveloped consciousness, but from something ancient and powerful. Ashura's dormant soul, a fragment of the Sage of Six Paths legacy, created a spiritual barrier that deflected Ishiki's attempt at possession. The Karma Seal remained, its power intact, but the Otsutsuki found himself unable to override the child's developing identity. Ishiki's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in contemplation. "Interesting," he muttered. "Very interesting indeed." The plan had changed, but not necessarily for the worse. This child would not be his vessel in the traditional sense, but something potentially more valuable, a hybrid existence with access to both Ashura's and his own Otsutsuki power, a being that could potentially surpass even what Isshiki himself had become. "Very well, Naruto Uzumaki," Isshiki said, stepping back as Minato completed the 8-trigram seal, unaware of what had transpired in those brief moments. "Grow strong with my power. I shall be watching." As the Nine Tails was sealed within the infant, a second, more subtle binding was already taking root. The diamond mark on Naruto's palm pulsed once more before fading almost entirely from sight, its power dormant but present, waiting for the day it would awaken. Ishiki vanished into the night, leaving behind a legacy that would alter the destiny of not just the child, but the entire shinobi world. 6 years passed in Konoha. The village had rebuilt after the Nine Tails attack, though the scars remained both in its architecture and in the hearts of its people. None bore those scars more visibly than Naruto Uzumaki, the Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tailed Fox, who faced the villagers' cold stares and whispered contempt daily. At the academy training grounds, Naruto stood alone, frustration etched on his young face as he attempted the transformation jutsu for what felt like the 100th time. Other students had long since mastered this basic technique, but something about his chakra control made it extraordinarily difficult. "Focus, Naruto," he muttered to himself, forming the hand signs once more. "You can do this." But the transformation failed again, producing only a puff of smoke that dissipated to reveal his unchanged form. Tears of frustration welled in his eyes as he punched the training post with all his might. "It's not fair," he shouted, striking the post again. "Why can't I get it right?" Something deep within him stirred at that moment. Not the Nine Tails, which remained dormant behind its seal, but another power that had lain dormant since the night of his birth. As his small fist connected with the training post once more, the diamond-shaped mark on his palm flickered to life, black lines spreading up his arm like ink in water. Naruto gasped as he felt a sudden surge of power and clarity. The world around him seemed to slow down, his perception sharpening to unprecedented levels. When his fist struck the post again, the impact was absorbed into his hand, the post's kinetic energy flowing into his body as if he were drawing water from a well. Irika Yumino, who had been observing from a distance, froze in shock. The marks spreading across Naruto's arm weren't from the Nine-Tailed seal. This was something entirely different. And when Naruto struck the post again, Irika's trained eyes detected something impossible. The boy's arm had momentarily shrunk before impact, then expanded with explosive force. The training post shattered, fragments flying in all directions. Naruto stood amid the destruction, looking at his hand in wonder as the black marks receded, vanishing beneath his skin once more. What was that?" he whispered, flexing his fingers. He felt no pain, only a lingering warmth and sense of clarity. Irika approached cautiously. "Naruto, are you all right?" The boy looked up, his blue eyes wide with surprise and confusion. "Irika-sensei, did you see that? I don't know what happened, but it felt amazing." Irika knelt beside him, carefully taking Naruto's hand to examine it. The skin appeared normal now, with no trace of the black markings he'd witnessed seconds before. "I think we need to speak with the Hokage," Irika said quietly. In the Hokage's office, Hiruzen Sarutobi listened intently as Irika described what he had witnessed. Naruto sat fidgeting in a chair, alternating between excitement at his mysterious new ability and nervousness at being the center of such serious attention. "And you say the markings were not from the Nine-Tailed seal?" Hiruzen asked, his weathered face creased with concern. "No, Lord Hokage," Irika confirmed. "These were different, geometric patterns, almost like tribal markings, spreading from his palm up his arm." Hiruzen turned to Naruto. "Has anything like this happened before, my boy?" Naruto shook his head. "No, but it felt like I suddenly understood everything. Like I could see how chakra works, and I could feel the post's energy coming into me when I hit it." The third Hokage's eyes narrowed slightly. He had lived long enough to recognize when something was beyond even his considerable knowledge. "Naruto, may I see your palm?" he asked gently. The boy extended his hand. Hiruzen examined it carefully, channeling a small amount of his own chakra to probe for any reaction. For just an instant, the faintest outline of a diamond-shaped mark flickered beneath the skin before fading again. "I see," Hiruzen murmured, though in truth, he understood very little of what he was seeing. The mark was clearly not of the Uzumaki sealing traditions, nor did it match any known curse mark or jutsu formula in Konoha's archives. It possessed an otherworldly quality that reminded him of legends, tales of beings from beyond the stars who had walked the earth in ancient times. "Am I in trouble?" Naruto asked in a small voice. Hiruzen's expression softened. "No, Naruto, but I would like you to tell me immediately if this happens again." And perhaps we should arrange for some additional training to help you understand these abilities. That night, Hiruzen summoned his most trusted A and BU agents and gave them a new assignment. Monitor Naruto Uzumaki discreetly and report any unusual manifestations of power. Whatever had awakened in the boy, Hiruzen suspected it was only the beginning. 2 years passed, and Naruto's development took an unexpected turn. What had once been a struggling academy student transformed into something that bewildered his instructors, a prodigy whose tactical intelligence and chakra manipulation abilities emerged seemingly overnight. At age 8, Naruto sat cross-legged in his apartment, his eyes closed in concentration. Since that day at the training grounds, he had experienced increasingly vivid dreams, visions of advanced jutsu and combat techniques far beyond what was taught at the academy. More disturbingly, he sometimes dreamed of places he had never seen, vast, otherworldly landscapes with multiple moons and strange gravity. "Focus," he whispered to himself, forming a hand sign he had seen in his dreams. The diamond mark on his palm pulsed faintly as he channeled chakra through his network in a pattern that no academy student should have known. The air around his hand distorted slightly, creating a miniature spatial distortion that allowed him to reach into what appeared to be empty space and withdraw a kunai he had placed there earlier. Naruto grinned at his success. He couldn't explain how he knew these techniques. They simply came to him like memories he hadn't realized he possessed. Each success brought not only greater skill, but also a growing confidence that began to chip away at the isolation he had endured for so long. At the academy, the transformation was becoming impossible to ignore. Irika watched with a mixture of pride and concern as Naruto mastered techniques in days that took other students weeks to learn. More remarkable was his approach to problem solving. Rather than the brute force attempts of his earlier years, Naruto now analyzed situations with a tactical precision that sometimes left even Irika speechless. During a training exercise, Irika set up a capture-the-flag scenario where teams of students competed to claim a scroll while avoiding traps and opposing teams. Most groups approached the challenge with straightforward tactics, direct assaults, or basic diversionary maneuvers. Naruto's team, however, employed a strategy that no one had anticipated. Under his guidance, they used a combination of transformation jutsu to disguise themselves as leaves blowing in the wind, allowing them to drift unnoticed across the training ground. When confronted by an opposing team, Naruto didn't engage directly, but instead created a series of false trails that led their pursuers into each other, causing confusion while his team slipped away with the scroll. "That was remarkable," Irika said afterward, studying Naruto with newfound respect. "Where did you learn to think like that?" Naruto rubbed the back of his head with a bashful grin. "I just saw it in my mind, I guess, like a map of how everything would play out." Among his classmates, attitudes toward Naruto were slowly shifting. The isolation remained, but now it was tinged with a reluctant respect. Even Sasuke Uchiha, the class's acknowledged genius, had begun to regard Naruto with a measured curiosity rather than dismissal. During a sparring session, the two boys faced each other in the practice ring. Sasuke moved with the refined technique of his clan, his strikes precise and powerful. But Naruto moved differently, with an efficiency of motion that seemed to anticipate Sasuke's attacks before they came. When Sasuke launched a particularly rapid combination, something extraordinary happened. To the observers, it appeared as if Naruto simply phased through the attack. But in reality, he had momentarily shrunk his body to a fraction of its size before expanding back to normal behind Sasuke, tapping him lightly on the shoulder. The Uchiha boy whirled around, his eyes wide with surprise. "How did you do that?" Naruto blinked, equally startled by what had just occurred. "I'm not sure," he admitted. That moment marked the beginning of an unusual dynamic between them. Not quite friendship, but a mutual recognition. Sasuke saw in Naruto a worthy rival, someone whose abilities challenged him to grow stronger. Naruto, for his part, found in Sasuke someone who didn't treat him with contempt or pity, but with the respect of an equal. As for Sakura Haruno, her initial dismissal of Naruto gradually gave way to a grudging fascination. While still devoted to Sasuke, she couldn't help but notice how Naruto's analytical approach to problems mirrored her own academic strengths. During group exercises, she found herself working alongside Naruto, with increasing frequency, drawn to his creative solutions and unexpected insights. "That's actually brilliant," she admitted one day after Naruto proposed an elegant solution to a complex chakra control exercise. "How did you figure that out?" Naruto's smile was genuine, without his usual bravado. "I just looked at the pattern underneath the pattern," he said, unable to fully explain the intuitive understanding that came to him through the karma's influence. By age 10, Naruto had become known throughout the academy as a tactical genius, a reputation that confused those who remembered his earlier struggles. His practical jokes continued, but they too evolved, becoming elaborate operations that displayed his growing strategic mind rather than simple acts of rebellion. The third Hokage watched this development with a mixture of pride and unease. Regular reports from Naruto's ANBU shadows described increasingly sophisticated abilities manifesting in the boy: enhanced perception, tactical genius beyond his years, and occasional physical feats that defied explanation. The mysterious mark on his palm remained mostly dormant, visible only during moments of intense concentration or emotional distress. "It's as if he's being guided," Hiruzen remarked to Kakashi Hatake during one of their private meetings. "Learning from some internal source of knowledge that none of us can access." Kakashi, who had been one of the ANBU assigned to monitor Naruto, nodded thoughtfully. "His development curve doesn't follow any pattern I've ever seen. It's not just accelerated learning. He sometimes demonstrates techniques that aren't taught anywhere in Konoha, and yet his heart remains unchanged," Hiruzen noted, smiling slightly. "For all his growing abilities, he still seeks acknowledgement and connection above all else. That may be what's saving him," Kakashi replied softly. "Whatever this power is, his essential nature seems to be tempering it rather than being consumed by it." As graduation approached, Naruto's abilities continued to evolve, but so did his relationships. The tentative connections he had formed with Sasuke and Sakura deepened through shared challenges and reluctant cooperation. For perhaps the first time in his life, Naruto began to feel that he belonged somewhere, that his worth was recognized not just for the mysterious power growing within him, but for who he was as a person. Yet beneath this progress, questions remained. The source of his abilities, the strange dreams that imparted knowledge no child should possess, and the diamond-shaped mark that occasionally pulsed with otherworldly energy, all pointed to a destiny far more complex than anyone in Konoha could have imagined. The day of team assignments arrived with a buzz of excitement among the newly graduated genin. Naruto sat in the classroom, fidgeting with his new headband while surreptitiously observing his classmates. His graduation had come after mastering the Shadow Clone Jutsu with unexpected ease. The technique that had once been his greatest weakness now came to him naturally, as if he had always known it. "Team 7, Irika announced, looking up from his clipboard. "Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura Haruno, and Sasuke Uchiha." Naruto couldn't suppress a grin. Despite their complicated relationship, he had hoped to be placed with these two particular classmates. Something about their combined potential resonated with the analytical part of his mind that had developed over the past few years. "Your Jonin instructor will be Kakashi Hatake," Irika continued, before moving on to the next team. Hours later, the newly formed Team 7 sat waiting in the empty classroom. Their assigned sensei was significantly late, testing even Naruto's growing patience. "This is ridiculous," Sakura fumed, pacing by the window. "Every other team has already left with their instructors." Sasuke leaned against the wall, his expression impassive, but his eyes occasionally darting to the clock. Naruto, meanwhile, sat cross-legged on the teacher's desk, his eyes closed in meditation. The technique had become a habit, a way to sort through the strange knowledge that sometimes flooded his mind. "He's testing us," Naruto said suddenly, opening his eyes, watching how he handled the weight. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. "How would you know that?" Naruto shrugged. He couldn't explain that he had sensed Kakashi's chakra signature outside the door for the past 20 minutes, or that something about the Jonin's deliberate delay spoke to the tactical part of his mind as an obvious evaluation strategy. "Just a feeling," he said instead. When Kakashi finally entered, presenting himself with a deliberately unimpressive introduction, Naruto observed him closely. Despite the Jonin's casual demeanor, Naruto could sense the carefully controlled chakra of an elite shinobi, precise, potent, and perfectly regulated. "My first impression of you all," Kakashi drawled, his visible eye surveying the three genin, is that you're rather boring. Naruto caught the subtle emphasis on the word impression and understood immediately. Another test, provoking them to reveal their true natures through their reactions. On the rooftop, as they introduced themselves, Naruto listened carefully to his teammates' declarations. Sakura's barely disguised infatuation with Sasuke, Sasuke's cold determination to restore his clan and destroy a certain someone. And then it was his turn. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki," he began, his voice steady. "I like ramen and people who treat others with kindness. I dislike those who judge without understanding. My hobby is..." He paused, considering how to describe his explorations of the strange abilities and knowledge that came to him. "Developing new strategies and techniques. And my dream is to become Hokage, not just for acknowledgement, but because I want to protect everyone in this village, including those who've looked down on me." Kakashi's eye narrowed slightly at the unexpected depth in Naruto's response. This was not the loud, brash child described in academy reports from his earlier years. The bell test the following day provided the first real glimpse of Team 7's potential. As Kakashi explained the rules, 2 bells, 3 students, 1 would fail. Naruto immediately recognized the underlying purpose. "This isn't about individual success," he whispered to his teammates as Kakashi pretended to adjust his equipment. "It's about teamwork. That's why there are only 2 bells, to divide us." Sasuke frowned. "You can't know that. Think about it," Naruto insisted. "Has there ever been a 2-person genin team? The 3-man cell is standard throughout all hidden villages. This is a test to see if we'll sacrifice the mission for personal gain." Sakura's eyes widened as she processed this logic. "That actually makes sense. So what do you propose?" Sasuke asked, his tone challenging but not dismissive. Naruto grinned. "I have an idea." When Kakashi gave the signal to begin, he expected the genin to scatter and attempt individual assaults as most teams did. Instead, he found himself facing all 3 simultaneously, moving with a coordinated precision that genin shouldn't possess. Sasuke engaged from the front with taijutsu, while Sakura attacked from the flank with a combination of academy techniques executed with perfect timing. Most surprising was Naruto, who didn't attack directly at all, but instead created shadow clones that seemed to move with tactical purpose rather than overwhelming numbers. As the battle progressed, Kakashi found himself genuinely pressed to maintain advantage. Naruto's clones weren't just distractions, but positioned to herd him into specific zones where Sasuke and Sakura waited with prepared traps. When he substituted away from one ambush, he found himself facing another, as if Naruto had predicted his escape routes. "Interesting approach," Kakashi murmured as he deflected a volley of shuriken from Sasuke while simultaneously dodging a clone's low sweep. But still not enough. That's when he noticed something odd. One of Naruto's clones had broken from the pattern, shrinking to a barely visible size and moving toward the bells at his waist. The technique wasn't one Kakashi recognized. Not a transformation, but an actual reduction in physical dimension that shouldn't have been possible for a genin. Before he could react, the miniaturized clone expanded back to normal size directly beside him, fingers closing around the bells, just as Sasuke launched a fireball that forced Kakashi to leap away. The clone tossed one bell to Sasuke and the other to Sakura before dispelling itself. The real Naruto emerged from the tree line, grinning despite being the only one without a bell. "So, I guess I'm going back to the academy," he said, though his expression showed no disappointment. Kakashi stared at the 3 genin, particularly at Naruto. "That shrinking technique. Where did you learn it?" Naruto's smile faltered slightly. It just came to me. I've been able to do it for a while now." Kakashi exchanged a long look with the boy, recognizing that there was much more to this story. Then, to the surprise of Sakura and Sasuke, he eye-smiled. "You all passed," he announced. "The purpose of this test was indeed teamwork, which you demonstrated admirably, though I am curious about some of the techniques employed." Later, after dismissing Sasuke and Sakura, Kakashi held Naruto back. "That ability isn't in any of Konoha's records," he said quietly. "The third has briefed me on your unique development, but I'd like to hear from you directly. What else can you do that you haven't shown?" Naruto looked down at his palm, where the diamond mark was faintly visible beneath the skin. "I'm not entirely sure myself," he admitted. "Sometimes knowledge just comes to me. Techniques, strategies, insights about chakra that I can't explain. And there are physical abilities too. The shrinking you saw, enhanced perception, and he hesitated. I can absorb certain kinds of chakra attacks. Kakashi's eye widened slightly. Show me. Naruto nodded, extending his hand. Try small fire jutsu. With caution, Kakashi formed the signs for a minor fire technique, sending a controlled flame toward Naruto's outstretched palm. The diamond mark flared to life, black lines spreading across Naruto's hand as the flame seemed to flow into his skin, disappearing completely. It doesn't work on everything, Naruto explained as the marks receded. Physical attacks are harder, and I can't absorb too much at once without getting exhausted. But chakra-based techniques, they feel like they're just feeding me somehow. Kakashi was silent for a long moment, processing what he had witnessed. We'll need to develop these abilities carefully, he finally said, and you'll need to be cautious about displaying them too openly until we understand their source and limitations. Naruto nodded, relief evident in his expression. So you're not afraid of what I can do? Naruto, Kakashi said gently. Our job as shinobi is to use every tool at our disposal to protect our village and complete our missions. Your abilities are simply tools. Exceptional ones, certainly, but ultimately defined by how you choose to use them. For the first time since his abilities had begun manifesting, Naruto felt truly accepted rather than merely observed. Kakashi didn't treat his powers as something dangerous or alien, but as assets to be developed and refined. In the weeks that followed, Team 7 took on a series of D-rank missions that tested their patience more than their skills. Throughout these mundane tasks, Kakashi observed how his team functioned. Sasuke's technical excellence, Sakura's intelligence and precision, and Naruto's increasingly evident tactical genius combined to complete even simple missions with surprising efficiency. More intriguing was how Naruto's abilities continued to develop. During training sessions, Kakashi noticed that the boy seemed to absorb knowledge at an accelerated rate, mastering chakra control exercises that should have taken weeks in mere days. His tactical thinking evolved as well, developing from basic strategy to complex, multi-layered approaches that accounted for numerous contingencies. It's like watching a veteran commander in a child's body, Kakashi remarked to the third Hokage during one of his reports. He anticipates problems before they arise and develops countermeasures that even I wouldn't have considered. Hiruzen nodded thoughtfully, and the mark on his palm, it appears during moments of concentrated chakra use or emotional intensity, Kakashi replied. The abilities seem to be expanding gradually, shrinking absorption, enhanced perception, and now I've noticed instances of spatial awareness beyond what should be possible for his age and experience. Keep him challenged, Hiruzen advised. Whatever this power is, it seems to respond to necessity and growth. And watch his heart closely. That remains our greatest concern. On that front, I have only good news to report, Kakashi said with a small smile. For all his growing abilities, Naruto remains essentially Naruto, kind, determined, and focused on protecting his teammates above all else. As the weeks turned to months, Team 7's dynamic evolved. Sasuke's initial resentment of Naruto's abilities gave way to a grudging respect, particularly when Naruto began sharing tactical insights that helped Sasuke refine his own techniques. Sakura, meanwhile, found herself drawn to Naruto's analytical approach, often working with him to develop strategies that complemented both Sasuke's combat prowess and her own precise chakra control. For Naruto himself, these connections were more precious than any power. The acknowledgement from his teammates, the guidance from Kakashi, and the growing confidence in his own abilities combined to create something he had never truly experienced before, a sense of belonging. Yet beneath this progress, the diamond mark on his palm continued to pulse with otherworldly energy, a reminder of mysteries yet unsolved and powers not yet fully awakened. The mission to the Land of Waves marked a turning point for Team 7. What should have been a simple escort assignment revealed itself as something far more dangerous when two Chunin-level missing Nin attacked their group on the road. In the moment of ambush, Naruto's enhanced perception allowed him to detect the attackers hiding in a puddle despite there having been no rain. Rather than alerting his teammates verbally, he made subtle hand signals that Kakashi immediately recognized from ANBU protocols, signals that no genin should have known. When the attack came, the team was prepared. Sasuke moved to protect Tazuna, while Sakura, coordinated with Naruto's shadow clones to create a defensive perimeter. Kakashi, noting his team's surprising competence, allowed the situation to play out while remaining ready to intervene. Most remarkable was Naruto's response. Rather than the panicked reaction expected of a new genin, he analyzed the attacker's movement patterns and predicted their poison chain attack before it fully deployed. As the chain whipped toward him, black marks spread from his palm up his arm. With a gesture that shocked even Kakashi, Naruto created a small spatial distortion that redirected the chain's momentum, causing it to tangle around one of the attackers. What was that? Sakura gasped as the battle concluded with both assailants unconscious and bound. I'm not entirely sure, Naruto admitted, looking at his hand as the marks receded. It just came to me in the moment. Kakashi studied his student with new interest. That was a space-time manipulation technique, he said quietly. Something even most jonin can't perform. The revelation that their client had lied about the mission's danger level led to a team discussion about whether to continue. While Kakashi left the decision to his students, he observed their deliberation with growing approval. We can't abandon him, Naruto argued, his voice firm. If we leave, Gato will kill Tazuna and crush the land of waves entirely. The economic impact would eventually affect the Fire Country too. It's strategically unsound to retreat. It's not about strategy, Sasuke countered. It's about capability. Can we handle an A-rank mission with our current skills? I think we can, Sakura interjected, surprising both boys. Not individually, but as a team. Sasuke has the combat skills. Naruto has tactical insight and unusual techniques, and I can provide support and coordination. With Kakashi-sensei's guidance, we have a reasonable chance of success. Kakashi nodded, impressed by their analysis. Then we continue. But from now on, we operate with the understanding that this is an A-rank mission with commensurate risks. The journey to Tazuna's home proceeded without further incident. Though Naruto remained on high alert, his senses extended to detect any approaching threats. That night, while his teammates slept, he sat outside practicing a technique that had come to him in recent dreams. The creation of small portals that could redirect objects through space. The diamond mark glowed faintly as he concentrated, forming hand signs that felt ancient and powerful. A small spatial distortion appeared between his hands, a window into a pocket dimension that only he could access. He placed a kunai into the portal, watching it disappear, then formed another portal a few feet away, through which the kunai emerged. Impressive, came Kakashi's voice from behind him. That's not a technique taught in any of Konoha's scrolls. Naruto started, the portals collapsing as his concentration broke. Kakashi-sensei, I was just practicing a space-time ninjutsu that should be beyond the capabilities of most jonin, Kakashi finished, sitting beside his student. Where are you learning these techniques, Naruto? The boy hesitated, then answered honestly. Dreams, mostly. I see techniques, hand signs, chakra flows. When I wake up, I can just do them. It's been happening more frequently lately. Kakashi's expression grew serious. These aren't normal abilities, Naruto. The third believes they may be connected to something that happened the night you were born, something beyond the Nine Tails attack. You mean something to do with this? Naruto held up his palm, where the diamond mark pulsed gently beneath the skin. Yes, Kakashi confirmed, though we don't know exactly what it is or where it came from. What we do know is that it's granting you access to knowledge and abilities that shouldn't be possible for someone your age, or perhaps for any shinobi. Naruto absorbed this information silently, his usually expressive face thoughtful. Does this mean, am I dangerous? To the team, Kakashi placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. No, Naruto. If anything, these abilities make you an asset, but they also make you a mystery, one that could attract unwanted attention, which is why we need to be careful about how and when you display these powers. The following morning brought their first encounter with Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the hidden mist. As the missing means killing intent washed over them, Naruto felt the mark on his palm pulse warmly, seeming to neutralize the fear that threatened to paralyze his teammates. Stay calm, he said quietly to Sasuke, who had begun trembling. His killing intent is just chakra. It can't actually harm us unless we let it affect our judgment. Sasuke shot him a surprised look, but steadied himself, the panic in his eyes receding. When Zabuza trapped Kakashi in a water prison and sent a water clone to attack the genin, Naruto's tactical mind immediately assessed the situation. "Sasuke," he whispered, "I need you to engage the water clone directly. Sakura, protect Tazuna and be ready to support Sasuke if needed." "What about you?" Sasuke asked. "I'm going for Zabuza himself," Naruto replied, his eyes fixed on the real, missing Nin holding Kakashi captive. "That's suicide," Sasuke hissed. "Trust me," Naruto said, the mark on his palm beginning to glow beneath his glove. "I have a plan." As Sasuke engaged the water clone with an impressive display of taijutsu and fire techniques, Naruto created a dozen shadow clones that spread out around the battlefield. But these weren't ordinary clones. Each one began shrinking to a fraction of its normal size, becoming nearly invisible as they scurried across the water surface. Zabuza, focused on maintaining the water prison and directing his clone against Sasuke, failed to notice the miniaturized clones approaching from multiple angles. When they were in position, Naruto formed a unique hand sign, and all the clones expanded simultaneously, creating a momentary disruption in the water's surface tension. In that split second of distraction, Naruto himself appeared directly behind Zabuza, having used a small portal to reposition himself. The diamond mark blazed across his arm as he placed his palm against Zabuza's back. Not to attack, but to absorb. "What the?" Zabuza began as he felt his chakra being drained, the water prison weakening enough for Kakashi to break free. "Now Sasuke," Naruto shouted. Sasuke, who had been waiting for this moment, launched a massive fireball directly at Zabuza. Unable to maintain his position with his chakra being drained, the missing Nin was forced to leap away, separating from both Kakashi and Naruto. "Interesting technique, brat," Zabuza growled, eyeing Naruto with newfound wariness. "That's not a jutsu I've seen before." Kakashi moved protectively in front of his student. "Stand down, Naruto. I'll handle him from here." The battle that followed was intense, with Kakashi eventually prevailing through his strategic use of the Sharingan. But it was Naruto's unexpected intervention that had turned the tide, a fact not lost on any member of Team 7. Later, as they recovered at Tazuna's house, Kakashi addressed Naruto privately. "That absorption technique, how much can you take in before it becomes dangerous for you?" Naruto shrugged. "I'm not sure. It feels like there's a limit, but it's more about processing the chakra than capacity. Different types feel different. Zabuza's was heavy, like water pressure, but I could handle it. And the portals? The shrinking." Kakashi pressed. "Getting easier," Naruto admitted, "especially in combat situations. It's like, the more I need them, the more naturally they come." Kakashi nodded thoughtfully. "We'll continue to develop these abilities, but discreetly. Against an opponent like Zabuza, they provide a crucial advantage. But remember, surprise is part of that advantage. Use these techniques sparingly and strategically." The week of training that followed revealed further differences in Team 7's development. While Sasuke and Sakura worked on chakra control through the tree climbing exercise, Naruto mastered it almost immediately, prompting Kakashi to assign him the more advanced water walking technique instead. Even this proved too simple. By the second day, Naruto was not only walking on water, but manipulating its surface tension to create platforms at different heights. Kakashi, recognizing the need to challenge his exceptional student, began teaching him more advanced chakra control exercises typically reserved for Chunin or Special Jonin. "You're developing an unprecedented rate," Kakashi observed as Naruto successfully maintained 5 different chakra exercises simultaneously. "At this pace, your control might soon exceed my own." Naruto grinned, though there was a thoughtful quality to his expression. "It doesn't feel like I'm learning these things," he admitted. "More like remembering them, as if I've done them before in another life." The final confrontation on the bridge provided the first full demonstration of Naruto's evolving abilities. When Sasuke became trapped in Haku's crystal ice mirrors, Naruto's tactical mind immediately began analyzing the technique, looking for weaknesses. Rather than charging in recklessly, he created a diversion with shadow clones while he himself shrank to a minute size, slipping between the gaps in the ice mirrors. Once inside, he positioned himself near Sasuke, who was already wounded from Haku's Senbon attacks. "Stay down," Naruto whispered, returning to normal size beside his teammate. "I'm going to try something." As Haku launched another barrage of Senbon, the diamond mark blazed across Naruto's arm, extending further than ever before, up his shoulder and partially across his chest. He raised his hand, and to Sasuke's astonishment, the Sunbond slowed in midair before being absorbed into Naruto's palm. "How are you doing that?" Sasuke gasped, his newly awakened Sharingan recording every detail of the technique. "I'm not sure," Naruto replied, his focus on Haku, "but I think I can do more." Concentrating intensely, Naruto extended his marked hand toward one of the ice mirrors. The mirror's surface rippled as if becoming liquid. Then a portion of it flowed toward Naruto, absorbing into his palm. The diamond mark pulsed with cold blue light as the ISSHIKI'S chakra integrated with Naruto's own. "Impossible!" Haku's voice echoed from the remaining mirrors. "You're absorbing my Kekkai Jinkai." Naruto didn't respond verbally. Instead, he formed a new hand sign, and the absorbed ice chakra flowed back out from his palm, forming a single ice sunbond that he launched with precision. The needle struck the mirror containing Haku's real body, creating a spiderweb of cracks across its surface. "Your technique is impressive," Naruto called out, helping Sasuke to his feet. "But it has a fundamental weakness. It requires you to maintain chakra connection with all the mirrors simultaneously. If one mirror is compromised, the entire structure becomes unstable." The observation was so precise, so tactically sound, that Haku momentarily froze in surprise. That moment was all Sasuke needed. With his Sharingan active, he launched a fireball at the cracked mirror, forcing Haku to emerge. What followed was a demonstration of teamwork that showcased Team 7's growing cohesion. Sasuke's fire techniques, enhanced by his Sharingan's predictive abilities, herded Haku into positions where Naruto had created small spatial distortions. These portals redirected Haku's movements, making his escape attempts lead him exactly where Naruto wanted him. Finally cornered, Haku removed his mask in a last attempt to appeal to their humanity. The revelation of his identity and his story of devotion to Zabuza resonated with Naruto, whose empathy remained his core trait despite his growing powers. "Understand serving someone precious to you," Naruto said, the marks receding from his arm as he lowered his guard. "But Zabuza sees you as a tool, not a person. You deserve better than that." Their conversation was interrupted by the sounds of combat elsewhere on the bridge, Kakashi's Raikiri piercing through Zabuza's defenses. What happened next unfolded with tragic inevitability. Haku's sacrifice to save Zabuza, Zabuza's realization of Haku's true worth, and his final redemptive stand against Gato and his mercenaries. Through it all, Naruto observed with growing understanding of the complex web of loyalty, sacrifice, and redemption that defined the shinobi world. When Zabuza, mortally wounded, asked to be placed beside Haku in his final moments, Naruto was the one who carried out this request, showing respect to the fallen enemy who had found his humanity at the end. He was stronger than he knew, Naruto said quietly as snow began to fall, an apparent response to Haku's passing. Not because of his jutsu, but because of what he was willing to do for someone precious to him. Sasuke, standing nearby with bandaged wounds, studied his teammate with newfound respect. "You could have killed Haku easily with those abilities of yours. Why didn't you?" "Because winning isn't always about killing," Naruto replied. "Sometimes it's about understanding." As Team 7 departed the Land of Waves, leaving behind a bridge named in Naruto's honor, they carried with them more than just the completion of their first A-rank mission. They returned with new abilities, deeper bonds, and the first true understanding of what it meant to be shinobi in a world where power and compassion were often at odds. For Naruto, the experience had awakened more than just new techniques. The diamond mark now pulsed with greater frequency, and his dreams grew more vivid. Visions of ancient battlefields, otherworldly dimensions, and techniques of staggering power. Though he didn't yet understand the source of these visions, he sensed that they were preparing him for challenges yet to come. The third Hokage, receiving Kakashi's detailed report of the mission, stared long at the description of Naruto's expanding abilities. Space-time manipulation, shrinking, absorption of chakra, and techniques. "These are not abilities known to any shinobi lineage in our records," he murmured. "We must accelerate our research into the origin of that mark." The Chunin exams arrived with a buzz of excitement throughout Konoha. For Team 7, it represented not just an opportunity for promotion, but a chance to measure their rapidly evolving abilities against peers from other villages. "Are you entering us, Kakashi-sensei?" Naruto asked during a training session, having just successfully demonstrated a new variation of his absorption technique that allowed him to store elemental chakra for later use. Kakashi smiled at his students. I am. All three of you have shown exceptional growth. The question isn't whether you're ready for the exams, but whether the exams are ready for you. As they received their application forms, Naruto felt the diamond mark pulse warmly on his palm. Lately, it had been reacting to his emotions more frequently, particularly excitement or anticipation. The black lines would briefly appear, tracing patterns across his skin before fading again, leaving behind a lingering warmth and clarity of thought. The night before the first exam, Naruto sat cross-legged on his apartment floor, meditating as had become his habit. In this state, he could sometimes access the strange reservoir of knowledge that seemed to exist within the mark, drawing out techniques and insights that came to him like half-remembered dreams. Tonight, something different occurred. As he sank deeper into meditation, he found himself standing in a vast, otherworldly landscape, a dimension with multiple moons hanging in an alien sky, the ground beneath his feet composed of what appeared to be crystalline structures rather than earth. "Welcome, vessel," came a voice that seemed to reverberate from everywhere and nowhere. Naruto turned to find himself facing a tall, pale figure with strange protrusions from his head and cold, calculating eyes. The being radiated power unlike anything Naruto had ever sensed, ancient, overwhelming, and distinctly inhuman. "Who are you?" Naruto asked, surprised to find that fear was absent. Something about this encounter felt inevitable, as if he had been prepared for it his entire life. "I am Otsutsuki," the figure replied, studying Naruto with clinical interest. "And you are my legacy, though not in the way I originally intended." "Otsutsuki," Naruto repeated, the name resonating with fragments of knowledge from his dreams. "You're not from this world." Perceptive, Ishiki acknowledged with the barest hint of a smile. "No, I'm not. My clan has visited your world many times throughout its history. We are, you might say, cultivators of power." "The mark on my palm," Naruto said, understanding dawning. "It's yours." "The karma," Ishiki confirmed. "A seal designed to preserve my essence after death, allowing me to be reborn through a suitable vessel." "You were to be that vessel, Naruto Uzumaki." But something intervened. Images flashed through Naruto's mind. The night of the Nine-Tails attack. An infant crying on a ceremonial altar, pale fingers pressing against a tiny palm, and then resistance, a golden light that pushed back against the encroaching darkness. "Ashura's soul," Naruto murmured, the knowledge coming to him from somewhere deep within. "He's inside me too." Indeed, the reincarnation of a sage's son created a barrier that prevented my complete possession. Rather than becoming my vessel in the traditional sense, you have become something unique, a human with access to Otsutsuki power while maintaining your own identity and will. Naruto processed this information, his tactical mind immediately analyzing the implications. These abilities, the shrinking, absorption, spatial manipulation, they're yours. "They are," Ishiki confirmed. Or rather, they were. Now they're yours to command, though you have barely scratched the surface of their potential. The knowledge comes to you in fragments as your chakra network develops the capacity to channel more of my power. "Why are you telling me this now?" Naruto asked, suspicion finally arising. "What do you want from me?" Ishiki's expression remained impassive. "Want? An interesting question. I cannot possess you as intended, so my existence is now tied to yours in a more symbiotic relationship. Your growth serves my interest in observing how Otsutsuki power manifests in a human who retains autonomy. You're using me as an experiment," Naruto concluded, his eyes narrowing. "Consider it a mutually beneficial arrangement," Ishiki countered. "You gain power beyond what any human could naturally achieve. I gain knowledge and a form of continued existence. The upcoming trials will accelerate this process. Stress tends to awaken dormant abilities." Before Naruto could respond, the vision began to fade, the crystalline landscape dissolving around him. Ishiki's final words echoed as Naruto returned to consciousness in his apartment. "We will speak again, vessel. Grow stronger. Survive. What comes for this world will require every fraction of power you can master." Naruto's eyes snapped open, the diamond mark on his palm glowing with an intensity he had never seen before. The black lines had spread further than ever, covering his entire arm and creeping across his chest. More disturbing was the knowledge that now flooded his mind. Techniques, history, and insights about chakra that no human should possess. Otsutsuki, he whispered, the word feeling both alien and familiar on his tongue. What have I become? The next morning, Naruto met his teammates at the academy building where the first phase of the Chunin exams would take place. Despite his disturbing vision, he had made a decision. He would use these powers to protect his friends and village, regardless of their source. The abilities themselves were neutral. Their purpose would be defined by how he chose to employ them. "You look serious today," Sakura observed as they climbed the stairs. "Everything okay?" Naruto offered a reassuring smile. "Just focused. These exams are important." As they navigated the Jinjutsu trap on the second floor, Naruto's enhanced perception immediately detected the illusion. Rather than pointing it out directly, he caught Sasuke's eye and made a subtle hand sign they had developed during training. Information without alerting opponents. Sasuke nodded imperceptibly, understanding the message. They passed the disguised Chunin without confrontation, saving their energy and maintaining the element of surprise regarding their abilities. The written test provided the first real opportunity to apply Naruto's strategic thinking in the exam context. Ibiki Marino's psychological warfare was impressive, but Naruto immediately recognized the true purpose behind the impossible questions. "It's about information gathering," he whispered to Sakura, who sat beside him. "The questions are too difficult for Genin to answer legitimately. We're meant to cheat without getting caught." Sakura's eyes widened slightly as she processed this insight. Then she nodded. While she had the knowledge to answer most questions directly, Sasuke used his Sharingan to copy another candidate's movements. Naruto employed a more unusual approach, creating a tiny, nearly invisible clone that shrank to the size of an insect. He sent it crawling across the ceiling where it could observe multiple papers. The information was relayed back to him through their shared consciousness, allowing him to answer the questions without any detectable cheating methods. When Ibiki revealed the true nature of the 10th question, Naruto remained calm while many teams folded under the pressure. His tactical analysis had already identified the psychological manipulation at play. The question itself was a test of resolve and willingness to accept risk. Chunin face impossible choices daily, Naruto said quietly to himself. This is simply the first of many. The second phase in the Forest of Death brought Team 7's first encounter with Orochimaru, disguised as a grass ninja. As they ventured deeper into the forest, Naruto's enhanced senses detected a disturbance in the chakra patterns around them. Something ancient and malevolent that set the diamond mark on his palm burning. Something's wrong, he warned his teammates, the black lines beginning to spread across his arm reflexively. There's a powerful chakra signature approaching, Jonin level at least. Sasuke activated his Sharingan, scanning the surrounding trees. Where? Before Naruto could answer, a massive wind technique tore through the forest, separating the team. As Naruto tumbled through the underbrush, he felt the karma mark flare with unprecedented intensity, as if responding to the presence of the attacker. When he finally regained his bearings and rushed back to find his teammates, he arrived to witness a horrifying sight. Orochimaru, his disguise partially abandoned, extending his neck to bite Sasuke on the shoulder. "Sasuke!" Naruto shouted, the karma mark blazing across his body as anger and protective instinct surged through him. Orochimaru turned, his serpentine eyes widening in genuine surprise as he perceived the black markings spreading across Naruto's skin. My, what have we here? That's not the Nine Tails chakra. With speed that shocked even Orochimaru, Naruto closed the distance between them, his right hand extended. The diamond mark pulsed with blinding intensity as he attempted to grab the Sannin's arm. Orochimaru barely evaded, leaping back with an expression of fascination. "Interesting," the Sannin hissed. "That pattern, it's not a curse mark of any kind I recognize. Something far more ancient." His tongue flicked out, tasting the air. How delicious. Two exceptional specimens in one team. Naruto positioned himself protectively in front of the collapsed Sasuke and disoriented Sakura. "Leave now," he demanded, his voice carrying an authority beyond his years, "or I'll show you exactly what these markings can do." To demonstrate, He raised his hand and created a spatial distortion that began to absorb the very air around it, creating a localized vacuum that pulled at Orochimaru's clothing. The Sannin's eyes narrowed with genuine interest. Space-time manipulation at your age? Most impressive, but not enough, I'm afraid. With blinding speed, Orochimaru launched a counterattack, his hands forming signs for a technique that sent multiple snake summons hurtling toward Naruto. The diamond mark pulsed again as Naruto extended his palm, absorbing the chakra constructs entirely. As I suspected, Orochimaru murmured, "Absorption capabilities as well. You're full of surprises, Naruto-kun." The battle that followed pushed Naruto's abilities to their limit. Though vastly outmatched in experience and raw power, his karma-enhanced reflexes and absorption abilities allowed him to counter many of Orochimaru's techniques. When the Sannin launched a particularly devastating fire jutsu, Naruto not only absorbed it, but redirected the energy to create a spatial portal that briefly displaced Orochimaru's position, causing his next attack to miss. Magnificent! Orochimaru laughed, clearly enjoying the unexpected challenge. Such potential, but I've learned what I needed for now. With a final, enigmatic smile, the Sannin melted into the forest floor, his parting words hanging in the air. "We will meet again, Naruto-kun. I look forward to seeing how both my marked ones develop." As the adrenaline of battle faded, Naruto rushed to check on Sasuke, who was writhing in pain from the curse mark. The diamond pattern on Naruto's palm pulsed as he examined the malevolent chakra spreading through his teammates' network. "Sakura," he said urgently, "we need to find shelter. Sasuke's been infected with some kind of parasitic chakra construct." For the next day, they holed up in the hollow of a massive tree, taking turns to stand guard while Sasuke burned with fever. Naruto studied the curse mark with his enhanced perception, the karma allowing him to see chakra patterns that would be invisible to others. "It's trying to override his chakra network," Naruto explained to a worried Sakura. "Similar to my mark in some ways, but cruder, more invasive. Can you remove it?" she asked desperately. Naruto shook his head, not without understanding it better. But maybe. He placed his marked palm over Sasuke's cursed seal, concentrating deeply. The diamond pattern spread across his arm as he attempted to absorb some of the malevolent chakra, not to remove the seal entirely, but to reduce its immediate effects. Sasuke's labored breathing eased slightly as Naruto drew a portion of the curse mark's energy into himself, filtering it through his own unique chakra system before releasing it harmlessly. It wasn't a cure, but it bought them time. The remainder of the Forest of Death trial tested Team 7 in new ways. With Sasuke weakened and the curse mark a constant threat, Naruto took on a more prominent leadership role. His tactical planning allowed them to secure a second scroll with minimal confrontation, prioritizing stealth over direct combat. When they did face the team from sound, Naruto's abilities once again proved decisive. As the sound ninja Zaku prepared his devastating air pressure attack, Naruto created a small spatial distortion that redirected the blast back at its user. The resulting explosion created the opening Sasuke needed to enter the fight. The curse mark partially activated, but under his tentative control. The preliminary matches that followed the second phase showcased the diverse abilities of the remaining candidates. Naruto's match against Kiba Inuzuka presented an opportunity to display his tactical acumen without revealing too much about his more unusual abilities. As Kiba and Akamaru launched their coordinated assault, Naruto initially relied on shadow clones and basic taijutsu, analyzing his opponent's patterns. Only when Kiba employed his Fong over Fong technique did Naruto use a fraction of his karma abilities, subtly shrinking himself at the moment of impact to reduce damage while creating the impression he had merely dodged. "Something's different about you," Kiba growled after several unsuccessful attacks. "Your movements, they're not normal." Naruto smiled slightly. "Let's just say I've been training." The match concluded with Naruto using a creative combination of shadow clones and a precisely timed substitution to confuse Kiba, followed by a straightforward but powerful strike that demonstrated his enhanced strength without revealing its source. From the balcony, Kakashi observed with approval. "He's being cautious with his abilities," he noted to Sasuke and Sakura, showing enough to win without revealing his true capabilities. That's Chunin-level thinking. The month-long training period before the finals allowed Naruto to focus on developing his growing abilities under Jiraiya's guidance. The Sannin, initially skeptical about taking on Minato's son as a student, was quickly impressed by Naruto's analytical mind and unusual techniques. "Kid, that shrinking ability of yours," Jiraiya remarked after watching Naruto reduce himself to the size of a mouse before expanding back to normal. "I've never seen anything like it. It's not a transformation technique. You're actually altering your physical dimensions." Naruto nodded, the diamond mark faintly visible on his palm. "It's connected to this," he admitted, showing Jiraiya the mark. "I can shrink other objects too, or even other people's jutsu if I touch them at the right moment." Jiraiya examined the mark with growing fascination. "This is beyond any sealing technique I've studied. Almost reminds me of..." He trailed off, his expression becoming serious. "Naruto, have you ever heard the name Otsutsuki?" The boy's slight flinch was answer enough. Jiraiya's eyes narrowed. "What do you know about them?" After a moment's hesitation, Naruto described his vision of Ishiki and the revelations about the Karma Seal. Jiraiya listened without interruption, his expression growing more troubled with each detail. "The Otsutsuki clan is mentioned in our most ancient scrolls," Jiraiya finally said. "Beings from beyond our world who possessed godlike powers. Most consider them legends, but there have always been indications they were real. This Karma Seal sounds like a form of parasitic chakra transfer, a way for them to achieve a kind of immortality. But it didn't work properly on me," Naruto said, "because of Ashura's soul." "And the Nine Tails," Jiraiya added, "two powerful entities already housed within you, enough to disrupt the possession process." He studied Naruto thoughtfully. "Instead of replacing you, this Ishiki is enhancing you, granting you access to abilities that should be impossible for humans. Is that bad?" Naruto asked hesitantly. Jiraiya placed a hand on his shoulder. "Power itself is neutral, kid. It's how you use it that matters. From what I've seen, you're using these abilities to protect your friends and accomplish your missions. That's what your father would have wanted." The mention of his father startled Naruto. "You knew my father?" Jiraiya's expression softened. "I did, and he would be proud of the shinobi you're becoming, unusual abilities and all. Now, let's focus on developing your chakra control further. If you're going to wield these Otsutsuki techniques effectively, you'll need an even stronger foundation." The training that followed was intense. Jiraiya taught Naruto the Rasengan, expecting it to take weeks to master. To his astonishment, Naruto grasped the principles almost immediately, his enhanced understanding of chakra flow allowing him to form a perfect Rasengan in days rather than weeks. More impressive was what came next. Naruto began experimenting with combining the Rasengan with his karma abilities, creating variations that even Jiraiya had never imagined possible. Micro Rasengan, Naruto demonstrated, forming a standard Rasengan before shrinking it to the size of a marble while maintaining its power. The tiny sphere contained the same destructive potential in a much more concentrated form, capable of penetrating defenses that would deflect a normal Rasengan. Absorption Rasengan, he continued, forming another sphere that pulsed with the diamond pattern's energy. This variation could absorb an opponent's chakra on contact, adding it to the Rasengan's power while simultaneously weakening the target. Jiraiya watched these demonstrations with a mixture of pride and concern. "You're developing techniques that combine two entirely different chakra systems," he noted. "That's unprecedented. But be careful, we don't fully understand the long-term effects of channeling Otsutsuki power through a human body." The day of the finals arrived with tension hanging over Konoha. Rumors of potential conflict with the Sand Village circulated among the Jonin, though the civilian population remained unaware, focused entirely on the excitement of the tournament. Naruto's match against Neji Hyuga was scheduled early in the bracket. As he faced the prodigy of the Hyuga clan across the arena, Naruto could sense the arrogance and pain that drove his opponent, the belief in an inescapable fate that had been carved into Neji's heart by years of resentment. "You cannot escape destiny," Neji declared as the match began, settling into the gentle fist stance. "One's fate is determined at birth." "Interesting theory," Naruto replied calmly, the diamond mark warming on his palm, though not yet visible. "Let's test it, shall we?" What followed was a demonstration of tactical precision that surprised even those who had witnessed Naruto's growth. Rather than attacking directly, he employed shadow clones and formations that tested Neji's defense patterns, cataloging the Hyuga's responses and identifying the subtle tells that preceded each gentle fist strike. Neji, growing frustrated with Naruto's elusive approach, activated his Byakugan fully. "Your chakra, it's unusual," he observed, his eyes narrowing. "There's something in your right palm, a concentration of energy unlike anything I've seen before." Naruto smiled slightly. Perceptive, but seeing isn't the same as understanding. When Neji finally managed to land a series of strikes on what he believed to be the real Naruto, his confidence surged, only to falter when his opponent dissolved into smoke, revealing himself as yet another clone. "Rotation," Neji shouted as the real Naruto attacked from behind, spinning to create the defensive dome that was supposed to be a main family technique. This was the moment Naruto had been waiting for. As Neji's rotation reached maximum speed, Naruto activated the karma, black lines spreading across his right arm. With precise timing, he struck the edge of the rotating chakra dome, his palm absorbing a portion of its energy while simultaneously creating a small spatial distortion. The result was spectacular. Neji's perfect defense collapsed asymmetrically, the disruption in its chakra flow creating an opening that allowed Naruto to land a decisive strike. Not a destructive blow, but a precisely placed tap that demonstrated he could have ended the match in that moment had he chosen to. Neji stumbled back, his Byakugan eyes wide with disbelief. "Impossible. You disrupted the rotation. No one has ever." "Nothing is impossible," Naruto interrupted, the black markings receding from his arm. "And no fate is inescapable. Your technique is impressive, Neji, but it has a fundamental weakness. It assumes chakra behaves consistently. When confronted with something that can absorb and distort chakra, even perfect rotation becomes vulnerable." The battle continued, with Neji fighting more desperately now, attempting to seal Naruto's chakra points with increasing precision. But Naruto's enhanced perception allowed him to anticipate these strikes, shifting subtly to redirect their impact or shrinking targeted body parts momentarily to avoid critical hits. The match concluded when Naruto finally employed a full-powered but standard Rasengan, deliberately using a recognized technique rather than his more exotic variations, to overwhelm Neji's defenses and secure victory. As medics tended to the defeated Hyuga, Naruto knelt beside him. "Your cage isn't as inescapable as you believe," he said quietly. "The marks on your forehead are just symbols. The real chains are in your mind." From the Kage box, the disguised Orochimaru studied the match with growing interest. "That boy," he murmured to his disguised subordinate. "He's developing even faster than I anticipated." The markings on his arm, they respond to his will rather than overtaking it. Most curious, the planned invasion interrupted the tournament before Naruto could witness Sasuke's match against Gaara. As Genjutsu swept through the stadium, putting civilians to sleep, Naruto's enhanced perception allowed him to detect and dispel it immediately. "Kakashi-sensei," he called out, spotting his instructor already engaging enemy shinobi. "What's happening?" "Sand and sound invasion," Kakashi replied tersely, dispatching another opponent. "Sasuke has gone after Gaara. I need you to follow and provide support. Sakura is already in pursuit with Shikamaru and others." Naruto nodded, immediately assessing the tactical situation. The village defenses? Being coordinated by the Jonin commanders. "Go. Naruto, Gaara may be the key to this invasion. If he's what I suspect, Sasuke will need your help." With a final nod, Naruto leapt into action, using his enhanced senses to track his teammates through the chaos of battle. As he moved through the forest in pursuit, he created shadow clones to assist civilians and younger shinobi with evacuation, directing them towards secure shelters with tactical precision that belied his age. When he finally caught up to the confrontation, he found a horrifying scene. Gaara partially transformed into a monstrous form, Sasuke wounded and exhausted from using Chidori, and Sakura pinned to a tree by a massive sand claw. "Naruto," Sakura called out, her voice strained. "Gaara's, he's like you. A Jinchuriki." The revelation crystallized Naruto's understanding of the situation. Gaara contained Shikaku, the one-tailed beast, but unlike Naruto, he had been consumed by his burden rather than containing it. "I see," Naruto said quietly, the diamond mark beginning to pulse on his palm. "Gaara, I understand your pain better than you know." The sand-covered boy turned his distorted face toward Naruto, a manic grin spreading across his features. You? Understand me? Impossible. No one knows my suffering. The isolation, Naruto replied calmly, stepping forward. The hateful stares, the whispers that follow you everywhere. The knowledge that you contain something monstrous and powerful, something that both defines you and separates you from everyone else. The black markings began to spread from his palm up his arm as he spoke. I know exactly how that feels. Gaara's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed with rage. If you truly understand, then you know only pain gives meaning to existence. Only by killing can I validate my survival. That's where you're wrong, Naruto said, the markings now covering most of his right side. Strength doesn't come from isolation or hatred. It comes from having something to protect. As Gaara launched a massive wave of sand, Naruto's abilities manifested in their most impressive display yet. The diamond mark blazed with otherworldly light as he extended his hand, creating a spatial distortion that absorbed the incoming attack. But rather than simply neutralizing it, Naruto redirected the energy, opening a portal behind Gaara through which the sand emerged, striking its creator from behind. The unexpected reversal momentarily stunned Gaara, creating the opening Naruto needed. With blinding speed, he closed the distance between them, his marked hand pressing against Gaara's chest directly over the seal that contained Shikaku. What are you doing? Gaara screamed as he felt Naruto's chakra interfacing with his own, the karma's energy somehow suppressing Shikaku's influence. Showing you another way, Naruto replied, his voice steady despite the strain. Your seal is flawed, designed to allow Shikaku influence over your consciousness. That's why you can't sleep, why you hear his voice constantly. Through the karma's enhancement of his perception, Naruto could see the structure of Gaara's seal, its weaknesses and imbalances that allowed the tailed beast to torture its host. Drawing on knowledge that seemed to flow from the diamond mark itself, he made subtle adjustments to the seal's configuration, not changing its fundamental nature, but harmonizing its elements to create a more stable barrier between Gaara and Shikaku. As the sand armor crumbled from Gaara's body, Naruto caught him before he could fall. You don't have to be alone anymore, he said quietly, and you don't have to kill to prove your existence. Your path is your own to choose. The battle's conclusion left both boys exhausted, but it was Gaara who experienced the most profound transformation. For the first time since early childhood, the voice of Shikaku had fallen silent in his mind, allowing him a moment of clarity untainted by the beast's bloodthirst. Why? Gaara asked weakly as his siblings arrived to retrieve him, the sand forces already in retreat as news of Orochimaru's failed assassination attempt on the third Hokage spread. Why would you help me? Naruto smiled, the black markings receding from his skin. Because I could have been you, and you could have been me. Our circumstances made us different, not our nature. As the invasion forces withdrew and Konoha began to assess the damage, Naruto found himself summoned to a private meeting with Jiraiya and several senior jonin. The topic: his unprecedented display of abilities during the crisis. You manipulated another Jinchuriki's seal, Jiraiya stated, his expression serious. That's not something even most seal masters could attempt, let alone successfully execute. How did you know what to do? Naruto looked down at his palm, where the diamond mark pulsed faintly. The knowledge just came to me. When I touched Gaara's seal, I could see its structure, understand its flaws. The corrections felt obvious. Jiraiya exchanged glances with Kakashi. This karma seal is granting you access to knowledge far beyond your experience level, possibly beyond human knowledge entirely. Is that dangerous? Kakashi asked quietly. Everything powerful is dangerous, Jiraiya replied. But in this case, Naruto used that knowledge to help stabilize another Jinchuriki, potentially averting future rampages. I'd call that a net positive. The death of the third Hokage in his battle with Orochimaru cast a shadow over these discussions. As Konoha mourned its leader, plans were already being made to search for his successor, a search that would take Jiraiya and Naruto away from the village on a mission to find Tsunade Senju. Before their departure, Naruto visited Sasuke in the hospital, concerned about his teammate's state following his encounter with both Gaara and, more troublingly, his brother Itachi, who had briefly infiltrated Konoha with his Akatsuki partner. How are you feeling? Naruto asked, finding Sasuke sitting silently by the window, his expression distant. Weak, Sasuke replied flatly. Itachi didn't even consider me worth killing. And you? His eyes shifted to Naruto, a complex mixture of emotions in their depths. You defeated Gaara when I couldn't. Your powers keep growing while I remain static. Naruto sat beside his friend, choosing his words carefully. My abilities aren't normal, Sasuke. They come from something outside myself, something I'm still trying to understand. The markings on your arm, Sasuke said. My Sharingan can see them even when they're not visible to others. They're similar to this curse mark in some ways, but different, more integrated with your chakra system, less parasitic. They're called karma, Naruto explained, surprised by Sasuke's perception, but relieved to share the truth with someone who might understand. It's a seal placed by beings called Otsutsuki, kind of like gods from another dimension. One of them tried to take over my body the night I was born, but couldn't fully possess me because of other factors. Sasuke's eyes widened slightly. So your abilities, the shrinking, absorption, spatial techniques, they're all Otsutsuki powers? Naruto nodded. They come with knowledge too, techniques and insights that just appear in my mind when I need them. He hesitated, then added, I could help you with the curse mark, you know? It's cruder than karma, but I understand its structure now. I might be able to modify it to give you access to its power without the corrupting influence. For a moment, interest flickered in Sasuke's eyes before being replaced by suspicion. Why would you offer that? Aren't you afraid I'll become stronger than you? This isn't a competition, Sasuke, Naruto replied gently. We're teammates. Your strength is Konoha's strength. And besides, he added with a small smile, having a rival who keeps pushing me to improve has its benefits. The conversation ended without resolution. Sasuke neither accepting nor rejecting Naruto's offer. But something had shifted between them, a deeper understanding that transcended their rivalry. The journey with Jiraiya to find Tsunade provided Naruto with new opportunities to develop his abilities away from the watchful eyes of Konoha. As they traveled, Jiraiya tested the limits of Naruto's powers through increasingly complex challenges. The absorption has limitations, Naruto discovered during one training session. Pure physical attacks can't be absorbed, only chakra-based techniques. And there's a capacity limit. If I absorb too much at once, it overwhelms my system. What about the spatial manipulation? Jiraiya asked, watching as Naruto created a small portal to transfer a kunai from one hand to another. Distance matters, Naruto explained. The further apart I place the entry and exit points, the more chakra it requires. And maintaining a portal takes continuous concentration. If I'm distracted, it collapses. These limitations were important discoveries, preventing Naruto from becoming overconfident in his growing abilities. But equally important were the new applications he continued to develop, ways to combine his karma powers with traditional shinobi techniques for maximum effectiveness. Their encounter with Kisame Hashigaki and Itachi Uchiha at a roadside tested these combinations in unexpected ways. When the Akatsuki members cornered them in a narrow hallway, Naruto's tactical mind immediately assessed the situation. Stay back, Jiraiya ordered, moving protectively in front of his student. These two are beyond even your abilities, Naruto. But Naruto had already activated the karma, black markings spreading across his arm as he analyzed the chakra signatures of their opponents. The tall one has enormous chakra reserves, he murmured. And his sword, it's alive somehow, feeding on chakra. The other is Sasuke's brother. Those eyes are dangerous. Kisame grinned, revealing sharp teeth. Well, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki has some perception skills. But those markings, his expression shifted to confusion. Those aren't from the tailed beast. Itachi's Sharingan focused on Naruto's arm, his usually impassive face showing a flicker of genuine surprise. Interesting. That pattern is not of this world. When Kisame swung Samahata in a devastating arc, Naruto didn't attempt to dodge or block. Instead, he extended his marked palm toward the blade, creating a spatial distortion that redirected its momentum, causing it to crash into the wall beside him rather than striking his body. What the? Kisame growled, his confidence shaken by the unexpected defense. Itachi's eyes narrowed. Space-time manipulation, similar to the fourth Hokage's technique, but fundamentally different. Taking advantage of the momentary surprise, Jiraiya launched his counterattack, transforming the hallway into the esophagus of a mountain toad. As the Akatsuki members retreated, Naruto caught a final, evaluating look from Itachi, a look that suggested their encounter had revealed something significant. They'll report what they saw to their organization, Jiraiya said grimly once the danger had passed. Your karma abilities are now on their radar. Is that bad? Naruto asked. It complicates things, Jiraiya replied. The Akatsuki are after the tailed beasts, but now they'll be curious about this other power you possess. On the other hand, it might make them more cautious in approaching you directly. When they finally located Tsunade, Naruto's unusual abilities once again proved decisive. During their confrontation with Orochimaru and Kabuto, Tsunade's hemophobia left her temporarily paralyzed, forcing Naruto to step in as her protector despite the vast gulf in their experience levels. Facing Kabuto's medical ninjutsu was particularly challenging. The medical ninja's precise chakra scalpels could sever muscles and tendons with the slightest touch, making conventional taijutsu suicidal. But Naruto adapted by combining shadow clones with his shrinking technique, creating a swarm of miniature clones that were difficult for Kabuto to track and target. Fascinating approach, Kabuto commented, adjusting his glasses as he destroyed several tiny clones with a sweeping chakra scalpel. But ultimately futile against a medical ninja who can manipulate cells directly. Naruto's response was to activate the karma more fully, the black markings now covering his entire right side. With enhanced perception, he could see the chakra flow in Kabuto's hands, identifying the precise nature of his medical techniques. Your chakra scalpels rely on a specific frequency to disrupt cellular cohesion, Naruto observed, surprising Kabuto with his analysis. But that frequency can be countered. Focusing the karma's power, Naruto created a modified Rasengan that pulsed with the diamond pattern's energy. When he slammed this against Kabuto's next attack, the medical ninja's technique dissipated, its chakra absorbed and neutralized by the counter-frequency Naruto had intuitively generated. Impossible, Kabuto gasped, retreating a step. You countered a medical ninjutsu with raw chakra manipulation? Not raw, Naruto corrected, the markings pulsing across his skin, precisely modulated to nullify your technique's specific frequency. The battle concluded with Tsunade overcoming her trauma to defeat Orochimaru, while Naruto managed to incapacitate Kabuto despite the medical ninja's regenerative abilities. As they returned to Konoha, with Tsunade prepared to assume the role of 5th Hokage, she questioned Naruto about his unusual techniques. Jiraiya has explained the basics of this karma's seal, she said, examining Naruto's palm with medical precision. But the cellular adaptation required to channel such power should be impossible for a human body. Your cells are restructuring themselves at a molecular level to accommodate these abilities. Is that dangerous? Naruto asked, concerned. Tsunade's expression was thoughtful. Not necessarily. Your Uzumaki vitality combined with the Nine-Tails' regenerative influence creates a unique constitution. Your body is adapting rather than being damaged. But I'd like to monitor these changes regularly once we return to Konoha. The return to the village brought new challenges, particularly concerning Sasuke. The curse mark's influence, combined with his feelings of inadequacy after confronting Itachi, had left him increasingly unstable. When reports arrived of the Sound Four, Orochimaru's elite guards, approaching Konoha, Naruto's tactical instincts immediately recognized their purpose. They're coming for Sasuke, he told Tsunade during an emergency meeting. Orochimaru wants him as his next vessel. How can you be certain? Shizen asked. Because it's what I would do in Orochimaru's position, Naruto replied, his strategic mind analyzing the situation with cold clarity. Sasuke has the Sharingan, which Orochimaru covets. He's vulnerable due to the curse mark and his desire for power. And after failing to defeat Itachi, he's susceptible to offers of strength, no matter the source. Tsunade studied Naruto with newfound respect. Your tactical analysis has surpassed most jonin, she observed. What do you recommend? Surveillance on Sasuke, increased village security, and… Naruto hesitated. I should speak with him directly. If anyone can understand the temptation of borrowed power, it's me. But Naruto's attempt came too late. That night, Sasuke left the village, following the Sound Four toward Orochimaru's territory. By the time the alarm was raised, they had a significant head start. I'm assembling a retrieval team, Shikamaru informed Naruto as they gathered at the village gates. As a newly promoted Chunin, I've been given command. I want you on this mission, Naruto. Your abilities could be decisive. Naruto nodded, the diamond mark pulsing faintly beneath his glove. I'll bring him back, Shikamaru. That's a promise. The team, consisting of Shikamaru, Naruto, Neji, Choji, and Kiba, with Akamaru, set out in pursuit, with Shikamaru developing a tactical formation that maximized their tracking and combat capabilities. As they moved through the forest, Naruto shared his insights on the likely abilities of the Sound Four based on intelligence gathered during the Chunin exam's invasion. They'll have curse marks similar to Sasuke's, he explained. When activated, these provide substantial power boosts but also alter personality, making them more aggressive and less rational. If we can separate them, we gain a significant advantage. Shikamaru nodded, impressed by Naruto's analysis. You've changed, Naruto. Your strategic thinking is on another level now. Experience changes people, Naruto replied simply, though the true source of his tactical insights remained unspoken. The pursuit strategy worked initially, allowing them to catch up to the Sound Four and briefly engage them. But the enemy's curse mark transformations proved more powerful than anticipated, forcing the retrieval team to split up as they encountered enemies individually. I'll continue after Sasuke, Naruto told his teammates as they each remained behind to face a different opponent. That's the mission priority. As his comrades engaged in their respective battles, Naruto pressed forward, eventually catching up to Sasuke at the Valley of the End, the historic battleground where Madara Uchiha had once fought Hashirama Senju. The symbolism of the location wasn't lost on either of them. So they sent you, Sasuke said, standing atop the statue of Madara, while Naruto faced him from Hashirama's. Their secret weapon. I came on my own, Naruto replied, studying his friend with concern. The curse mark had spread across half of Sasuke's face, its malevolent chakra distorting his features. Sasuke, this isn't the way to gain power. Easy for you to say. Sasuke laughed bitterly. You, with your mysterious abilities that keep growing without effort. You've never had a struggle for power. It was handed to you through that mark on your palm. You think this came without cost? Naruto asked quietly, removing his glove to reveal the diamond pattern. This mark is the remnant of an alien god who tried to possess my body. I gain power by channeling a being who sees humans as nothing but vessels. Every technique I learn comes with the knowledge that it wasn't earned through my own effort but borrowed from something ancient and inhuman. Sasuke's eyes widened slightly, the Sharingan activating to study the pulsing mark on Naruto's palm. Then you understand why I need Orochimaru's power. We're not so different. There's a crucial difference, Naruto countered. My mark enhances what I am without overriding my will. Orochimaru's curse mark is designed to corrupt and eventually replace you. He doesn't want to give you power, Sasuke. He wants to take your body. For a moment, doubt flickered across Sasuke's face before hardening into resolve. It doesn't matter. I need power now, not philosophical debates about its source. If you understand, you'll step aside. You know I can't do that, Naruto said, the diamond mark beginning to spread up his arm as he prepared for battle. Then I'll make you, Sasuke declared, the curse mark expanding further across his skin. What followed was a battle of escalating intensity, beginning with basic taijutsu exchanges before evolving into increasingly powerful ninjutsu confrontations. Sasuke's fire techniques were met with Naruto's spatial manipulations, redirecting the flames away from their target. When Sasuke employed his Chidori, Naruto countered with a Rasengan, the two techniques colliding in explosions of destructive energy. As the battle progressed, both combatants drew more deeply on their respective marks. Sasuke's curse mark spread completely across his body, triggering a transformation that gave him wing-like appendages and greatly enhanced strength. Naruto, meanwhile, allowed the karma to cover his right side entirely, the black markings creating geometric patterns across his face and torso. This power, Sasuke gasped as he launched another Chidori, this one crackling with the curse mark's dark energy. It feels incredible. Naruto didn't respond verbally. Instead, he extended his marked hand, creating a portal that absorbs Sasuke's Chidori completely before redirecting its energy into the lake below, causing a massive eruption of water. You can't beat me with techniques that rely on chakra, Naruto explained calmly. The karma allows me to absorb and redirect energy attacks. Frustrated, Sasuke switched to physical assaults, using his cursed form's wings to gain aerial advantage. But here too, Naruto countered with unexpected abilities, shrinking momentarily to avoid devastating kicks before expanding back to normal size to deliver counterattacks enhanced by the karma's strengthening effect. Why won't you use the Nine Tails power? Sasuke demanded after a particularly intense exchange left both of them panting. Are you looking down on me? Fighting at less than your full strength. I'm fighting as myself, Naruto replied. Not as a vessel for either the Nine Tails or the Otsutsuki. That's the difference between us right now. Sasuke, you're letting the curse mark fight for you, while I'm using the karma as a tool rather than surrendering to it. This observation struck a nerve. With a roar of frustration, Sasuke activated the curse mark's second level, his skin darkening to a grayish tone as his features became more monstrous. The transformation boosted his speed and strength to new heights, allowing him to break through Naruto's defenses and land a powerful blow that sent him crashing into the valley wall. Is this what you wanted to see? Sasuke shouted, his voice distorted by the transformation. My full power? Now show me yours. As Naruto pulled himself from the rubble, he made a decision. The karma mark pulsed with intensity as he channeled more of its power than ever before. Black lines spread across his entire body, and for the first time, small horn-like protrusions emerged from his forehead, a partial manifestation of ISSHIKI'S Otsutsuki form. This is what you asked for, Naruto said, his voice deepening slightly as the transformation completed. But remember, you forced this. The final phase of their battle transcended ordinary shinobi combat. Sasuke's curse mark-enhanced techniques clashed against Naruto's Otsutsuki-level abilities, creating devastation across the valley. When Sasuke launched his strongest Chidori, now black with corrupted chakra, Naruto countered with a Rasengan enhanced by the karma's spatial manipulation, a technique that compressed space itself around the spiraling sphere, multiplying its destructive potential. The collision of these techniques created a dome of energy that carved away portions of the surrounding cliffs. As the light faded, both combatants stood facing each other, exhausted but determined. Why? Sasuke demanded, his cursed form beginning to recede as he reached his limits. Why go this far for me? Because you're my friend, Naruto replied simply, the horn-like protrusions retracting as he too pulled back from full transformation. And because I understand the temptation of borrowed power better than anyone. With a final burst of speed, Naruto closed the distance between them. Rather than striking with force, he placed his marked palm against Sasuke's curse seal, channeling the karma's energy in a precise pattern. What are you doing? Sasuke gasped, feeling the curse mark's influence receding. Not removing it, Naruto explained, his expression intense with concentration, but modifying it, similar to what I did with Gaara's seal, creating a barrier between your consciousness and the seal's corrupting influence, while maintaining access to its power. As the modification took effect, Sasuke felt the curse mark's compulsions fading, the whispers of hatred and promises of power becoming distant rather than overwhelming. His thoughts cleared, the fog of Orochimaru's influence lifting to reveal the clarity of his own mind. This doesn't change my goal, Sasuke said quietly as the process completed. I still need to kill Itachi. I know, Naruto acknowledged, stepping back as the last of the karma markings receded from his skin. But now you can pursue that goal as yourself, not as Orochimaru's puppet. The power is still there for you to use, but the choice of how to use it remains yours. Sasuke stared at his hands, feeling the curse mark's energy still present, but no longer dominating his thoughts. I need time to think, to train on my own terms. I understand, Naruto said, though pain was evident in his expression. But not with Orochimaru. He'll find a way to undo what I've done and take control again. After a long moment of silence, Sasuke nodded. Not with Orochimaru, he agreed. But not in Konoha either. There are other places I can go, other sources of training. The retrieval team will be here soon, Naruto warned. If you're going to leave, it needs to be now. Sasuke studied his teammate, his friend and rival, with new understanding. Your power, it's not just the techniques, is it? It's how you use them. How you maintain your humanity despite abilities that should corrupt. The power doesn't define you, Naruto replied. Your choices do. With a final nod of acknowledgement, Sasuke turned and leapt away, disappearing into the forest beyond the valley. Naruto watched him go, knowing he had technically failed his mission to return Sasuke to Konoha, but believing he had succeeded in something more important, saving his friend from Orochimaru's complete domination. As he collapsed from exhaustion, Naruto felt the diamond mark pulse warmly on his palm. In his mind, he heard ISSHIKI'S voice for the first time since their initial encounter. Interesting choice, vessel. Perhaps there is more to human bonds than I previously understood. Naruto smiled faintly as consciousness faded. There's always more to learn, even for gods. When Kakashi arrived with medical reinforcements, he found Naruto unconscious but stable, his palms still glowing faintly with the diamond pattern's light. The destruction around the valley told the story of a battle far beyond Genin level, perhaps beyond Jonin level as well. He's changing, Kakashi observed quietly to Pakin as they waited for the medical team to stabilize Naruto, growing into something we don't fully understand. But his heart remains the same, the Ninken replied wisely. And that may be what saves us all in the end. As they carried Naruto back toward Konoha, storm clouds gathered on the horizon, harbingers of greater conflicts to come. Within the Akatsuki, reports of the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki's unusual abilities were creating new strategic concerns. In Orochimaru's hidden laboratories, the Sannin fumed over the loss of his intended vessel and the mysterious interference with his curse mark. And somewhere in the shadows, other Otsutsuki observed the unexpected development of a karma vessel who maintained his human identity while wielding powers that should have been beyond mortal reach. For Naruto himself, unconscious but healing, the journey was just beginning. The diamond mark on his palm continued to pulse with otherworldly energy, a constant reminder of the legacy he carried, not just as the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki or the fourth Hokage's son, but as something entirely new in the shinobi world, a human with access to godlike power who chose to remain fundamentally human in his heart. The stage was set for the next chapter of his story, one that would test not just his growing abilities, but the principles that guided their use. As Konoha faded into the distance behind Sasuke and approached on the horizon before Naruto's unconscious form, the paths of the two friends diverged for now, but with the certainty that they would cross again when the time was right. The mark of the divine had changed everything. Yet the most important things remained the same. The bonds that defined them, the choices that shaped them, and the dreams that drove them forward into an uncertain but promising future. The wind howled across the isolated mountain peak, whipping through the weathered cloak of the white-haired sage who stood watching his pupil with arms crossed. Below him, seated in perfect stillness upon a massive stone slab weathered by centuries of elements, Naruto Uzumaki had remained motionless for nearly 3 days. Black seal markings spiraled across his exposed torso, pulsing with an intensity that made even Jiraiya's experienced eyes narrow in concern. It shouldn't be taking this long, the Sannin muttered, his normally jovial expression replaced by deep concentration. The seal restructuring should have completed by now. Across the young man's abdomen, the 8-trigram seal that had contained the Nine-Tails for 16 years was undergoing a transformation unprecedented in the history of Jinchuriki. The rigid black lines that had once formed a perfect prison were now flowing like liquid across Naruto's skin, occasionally flaring with golden light before settling into new, more intricate patterns. This was the culmination of 2.5 years of relentless training. What had begun as simple chakra control exercises had evolved into something far more profound, a complete reimagining of what it meant to be a Jinchuriki. Jiraiya's mind drifted back to their first year together. Naruto had already been exceptional then, able to access the Nine-Tails chakra in small bursts. But those early manifestations had been crude and dangerous, the fox's malevolent influence bleeding through with each use. You're fighting against the Nine-Tails, Jiraiya had explained during their 6th month of training. Every time you draw on its power, you're essentially stealing it. That creates resistance, inefficiency, and risk. So what's the alternative? Naruto had asked, frustrated after a training session where the fox's chakra had overwhelmed him, leaving a small forest clearing completely devastated. Harmony, Jiraiya had replied simply. The greatest Jinchuriki in history didn't subjugate their tailed beasts. They partnered with them. That conversation had marked the beginning of a fundamental shift in Naruto's approach. Rather than attempting to dominate the Nine-Tails through sheer willpower, he began the painstaking process of understanding the ancient being sealed within him. Their breakthrough had come during the second year, deep within the temple ruins of an extinct civilization that had once worshipped the tailed beasts as deities. There, among stone carvings depicting the Nine Tails not as a monster, but as a divine guardian, Naruto had entered his mindscape and spoken to Kurama without hostility for the first time. "You know my name?" the massive fox had observed, genuine surprise momentarily replacing his perpetual snarl. "Kurama," Naruto had confirmed. "That's what the Sage of Six Paths called you, isn't it?" The conversation that followed had lasted for what felt like days within Naruto's mindscape, but was merely hours in the physical world. Kurama, suspicious at first, had gradually revealed fragments of his history. His creation alongside his siblings, his experiences with previous Jinchuriki, and his genuine outrage of being passed from one human prison to another like a weapon rather than a conscious being. "I've been alive for over 1,000 years, Kurama had growled. "I've watched civilizations rise and fall. I've seen how humans use power, always for dominance, never for harmony." "Then help me be different," Naruto had challenged. "If you've seen everything wrong with how humans use power, guide me towards something better." This philosophical exchange had marked the beginning of a tentative cooperation. By the end of their second year, Naruto could access what Jiraiya termed a partial Kurama chakra mode, a golden aura that enhanced his abilities dramatically without the previous risks of losing control. But now, in the final months of their training journey, they were attempting something unprecedented: the complete removal of the restrictive elements of the 8 trigram seal while maintaining its binding properties. If successful, it would allow Naruto and Kurama to share chakra freely, creating a perfect symbiosis while preventing the fox's physical form from emerging uncontrolled. As Jiraiya watched, concern growing with each passing hour, the seal suddenly flared with blinding intensity. Golden light erupted from Naruto's body, forming a pillar that stretched toward the storm clouds gathering above. The mountain itself seemed to tremble as ancient chakra, untethered for the first time in 16 years, surged through the young shinobi's network. "Naruto!" Jiraiya shouted, leaping forward only to be repelled by a shockwave of pure chakra that knocked him back several meters. When the light finally faded, Naruto remained seated in the same meditative position, but the transformation was unmistakable. The seal had completely disappeared from his abdomen, replaced by a subtle golden glow that seemed to radiate from within his very cells. As his eyes opened, Jiraiya gasped at the sight. Vertical slits within vibrant blue irises, not the crimson of Kurama's influence, but a perfect merger of human and bijou. "Naruto!" Jiraiya approached cautiously. "Are you still you?" A smile spread across the young man's face. Confident but gentle, powerful yet kind. When he spoke, his voice carried a depth and resonance it had never possessed before. "We are both here, Pervy's sage," Naruto replied, rising smoothly to his feet. "Kurama and I, we've reached an understanding. The seal is completely gone," Jiraiya observed in amazement. "Yet you're in perfect control." "Not control," Naruto corrected, his expression thoughtful. "Harmony. The seal isn't gone, it's evolved. Instead of a prison with me, as the jailer, it's now a bond between equals." To demonstrate, Naruto extended his hand. Instantly, golden chakra enveloped his form, creating a radiant aura that shaped itself into a flowing cloak. Unlike previous manifestations, there was no sense of barely contained malevolence, no struggle for dominance. The transformation was instantaneous and complete, with 9 flowing tails of pure chakra extending behind him. "Perfect Jinchuriki," Jiraiya whispered, using a term from ancient texts he had studied but never expected to witness. "Complete synchronization with the tailed beast." Naruto nodded, the chakra cloak dissipating as quickly as it had formed. "Kurama has given me access to his full power and knowledge. In return, I've given him freedom within our shared consciousness and a promise to use this power for something worthy of his legacy." "And what would that be?" Jiraiya asked, sensing a profound shift in his pupil's worldview. "Peace," Naruto replied simply. "Not through dominance or fear, but through understanding. Kurama has witnessed 1,000 years of shinobi history, of cycles of hatred and vengeance. Together, we might have the perspective needed to break that cycle. As they descended from the mountain the following day, Jiraiya marveled at the subtle, yet fundamental changes in his student. Naruto's movements had acquired an effortless grace, his observations a depth of insight that sometimes made the Sannin feel like he was speaking to someone far older than 16. Occasionally, Naruto would pause to contemplate something seemingly ordinary, a weathered stone, an ancient tree, and Jiraiya realized he was seeing these things through the layered perspective of both a curious young human and an ancient being who had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. During their final months together, Naruto demonstrated abilities that defied conventional understanding of Jinchuriki limits. He could instantaneously enter his Kurama chakra mode without hand signs or preparation. His sensory capabilities extended for kilometers, detecting not just chakra signatures but emotional states and intentions. Most remarkably, he could distribute Kurama's chakra to others without diminishing his own reserves, enhancing their abilities while forming a sensory network that allowed for perfect tactical coordination. "It's like nothing I've ever seen," Jiraiya admitted as they shared a meal at a roadside inn, 1 week before their planned return to Konoha. Even Kushina, who had remarkable control over the Nine Tails' power, never achieved this level of synchronization. "That's because she still saw Kurama as something to be controlled," Naruto replied, wisdom beyond his years evident in his expression. The Uzumaki clan developed powerful sealing techniques, but they never truly understood what they were sealing. "And you do?" Jiraiya asked, genuinely curious. Naruto was quiet for a moment, his eyes taking on the distinctive slitted appearance that indicated he was communing deeply with Kurama. "We understand each other," he finally said. "Kurama isn't just a source of chakra. He's a being with more knowledge and experience than any human could accumulate in a lifetime. He's seen civilizations rise and fall, watched the formation of the hidden villages, observed every major conflict in shinobi history. That perspective is as valuable as his power. And what has all that ancient wisdom taught you?" Jiraiya asked, sensing his student was on the verge of a profound insight. "That the system we've built, the hidden villages, the missions, the economic competition disguised as military necessity, it's all fundamentally unstable," Naruto replied. "Kurama has watched this pattern repeat for centuries. Peace through military deterrence only lasts until someone believes they have an advantage too significant to ignore." Pretty cynical perspective for the kid who used to shout about becoming Hokage, Jiraiya observed. Naruto smiled, his expression warming. "I still want to be Hokage, but now I understand that protecting the village means more than just being the strongest shinobi. It means addressing the systemic causes of conflict, not just winning the battles as they come." As they approached Konoha's massive gates after their long absence, Jiraiya found himself reflecting on the extraordinary transformation he had witnessed. The loud, impulsive boy who had left the village had returned as something unprecedented, a perfect synthesis of human determination and bijou wisdom, overwhelming power tempered by strategic brilliance and philosophical depth. "They're not ready for what you've become," Jiraiya said quietly as the gates came into view. Naruto nodded, his expression serious. "Few people truly understand what a Jinchuriki is capable of, much less a perfect Jinchuriki. I'll need to be careful about how much I reveal and when." Strategic thinking, another new development, Jiraiya observed with approval. "Just remember that while you've grown in extraordinary ways, your friends have been developing too. Don't underestimate them or distance yourself because of your transformation." "I won't," Naruto promised. Then a flash of his old mischievous smile broke through the serene exterior. "But I can't wait to see their faces when I show them what I can do now." The first test of Naruto's transformed abilities came sooner than expected. Their return to Konoha was immediately followed by urgent news. Gaara, who had become Kazekage of Sunagakure, had been captured by the Akatsuki. Team Kakashi, now including Naruto, was being dispatched immediately to assist in the rescue operation. As they raced towards Suna, Naruto maintained a composed exterior that puzzled his teammates. The formerly impulsive shinobi now moved with calculated precision, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings with an awareness that seemed to extend far beyond normal sensory ranges. "You've changed," Sakura observed during a brief rest. "It's not just physical, though you've definitely grown taller. There's something different about your presence." Naruto smiled gently. 2.5 years is a long time, Sakura. We've all changed. But there's something else, she insisted, her medical training making her more perceptive to subtle physiological differences. Your chakra feels vast, almost boundless. I've been training with my tenant, Naruto replied carefully, using the coded language they had established for discussing his Jinchuriki status. We've come to an understanding. Kakashi, listening nearby, raised an eyebrow at this significant understatement. As a former ANBU captain who had guarded Kushina during her time as a Jinchuriki, he recognized the implications of Naruto's transformed chakra signature. But he said nothing, understanding that his former student was being deliberately cautious about revealing the extent of his growth. Their arrival in Sunagakure revealed a village in crisis. Gaara had been taken after a devastating battle that had left many Suna shinobi injured, including his brother Kankuro, who was suffering from a complex poison developed by the Akatsuki member Sasori. As Sakura worked to develop an antidote, Naruto stood silently at Kankuro's bedside, his eyes closed in concentration. Those watching assumed he was worried about his fellow Jinchuriki, but in reality, he was extending his enhanced senses far beyond the village walls. "They're moving northeast," he suddenly announced, opening his eyes. 2 Akatsuki members with Gaara. They're approximately 70 kilometers from here, traveling at moderate speed toward what feels like a sealed chamber with multiple chakra signatures waiting inside. The Suna officials stared at him in shock. "How could you possibly know that?" Elder Chiyo demanded. "I can sense Gaara's chakra," Naruto replied simply, offering no further explanation for his unprecedented sensory range. "And we need to move quickly. They're planning to extract Shikaku, a process that will kill him if completed." The rescue team departed immediately, with Naruto setting a pace that challenged even Kakashi. As they traveled, the copy ninja moved alongside his former student, speaking quietly enough that the others couldn't hear. "That sensory ability isn't standard Jinchuriki enhancement," he observed. "You've achieved something significant with the Nine Tails, haven't you?" Naruto glanced at his teacher, then nodded subtly. "Kurama and I have fully synchronized. I'm now what the ancient texts call a perfect Jinchuriki." Kakashi nearly missed a step at this revelation. That's supposed to be theoretical. Even Killer Bee of Kumogakure hasn't achieved complete synchronization with the Eight Tails. It required a complete restructuring of the seal, Naruto explained, his voice still low, and a fundamental shift in how Kurama and I relate to each other. We're partners now, not prisoner and jailer. And the strategic insights? The unprecedented sensory range, access to his knowledge and senses, Naruto replied. Kurama can detect negative emotions across vast distances. Combined with my own sensory capabilities, there's very little within a 100-kilometer radius that escapes our notice. Kakashi processed this information with the rapid analytical ability that had made him a legendary shinobi. This changes everything about how we approach the Akatsuki threat, which is why I haven't revealed the full extent of my abilities to everyone, Naruto said. Strategic advantage depends on information asymmetry. Now you're even starting to sound different, Kakashi observed with a hint of amazement. The old Naruto would never have used a phrase like information asymmetry. Naruto smiled slightly. I have access to the vocabulary and knowledge of a being who's witnessed 1,000 years of history. It occasionally influences how I express myself. Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of a familiar chakra signature, Temari of the Sand, returning from a diplomatic mission to Konoha. After quickly briefing her on the situation, their expanded team continued toward the Akatsuki hideout. As they drew nearer to their target, Naruto's expression became increasingly focused. They've begun the extraction, he announced, his voice carrying an urgent edge. I can feel Shikaku's chakra being forcibly separated from Gaara's life force. We're still at least 2 hours away at maximum speed, Kakashi said grimly. The extraction typically takes 3 days, but with the number of Akatsuki members present, they might complete it faster. Then I'll go ahead, Naruto decided, his eyes shifting to their slitted form. The rest of you follow as quickly as you can. Before anyone could object, golden chakra erupted around Naruto's form, enveloping him in a radiant aura that momentarily blinded his companions. When their vision cleared, he was already moving at a speed that left afterimages in his wake, covering ground at a rate that seemed impossible even for elite Jonin. What was that? Temari gasped, staring at the golden trail rapidly disappearing into the distance. That, Kakashi replied with a mixture of pride and concern, was the new Naruto Uzumaki. Inside the Akatsuki hideout, the extraction of Shikaku was proceeding under the direction of Pain, the organization's enigmatic leader. The massive Geto statue loomed over Gaara's unconscious form, spectral dragons of chakra drawing the One-Tail's essence from the young Kazekage. 72% complete, Zetsu announced, his half-black, half-white form emerging partially from the cavern wall, proceeding faster than expected due to the weakness of the seal. Good, Pain replied through his holographic projection. Once the One-Tail is secured, his statement was interrupted by a massive tremor that shook the entire cavern. The stone boulder sealing the entrance didn't just break. It disintegrated into particles as a surge of golden chakra erupted into the chamber with the force of a natural disaster. At the center of this maelstrom stood Naruto, his form radiating with power that made the air itself seem to warp around him. 9 tails of pure chakra swept behind him, their movements creating gusts that further disrupted the extraction process. Impossible, Sasori growled from within his hunched Hiriko puppet. No one could have found us this quickly, let alone broken through the 5-seal barrier. It's the 9 tails Jinchuriki, Pain observed, his Rinnegan eyes narrowing with interest. But something's different. That chakra manifestation is unlike anything we've encountered before. Deidara, who had been guarding Gaara's body, smirked at the intruder. One Jinchuriki coming to save another? How convenient. Now we can capture both at once. Without waiting for orders, the blonde Akatsuki member thrust his hands into the pouches at his sides, the mouths in his palms, chewing clay in preparation for his explosive art. But before he could form a single creation, Naruto vanished from his position at the entrance, reappearing instantaneously beside Gaara. With a single swipe of his chakra-cloaked hand, Naruto severed the spectral dragons connecting Gaara to the Geto statue. The backlash of disrupted chakra created a shockwave that forced several Akatsuki members to dispel their projections to avoid chakra network damage. You're too late, Deidara taunted, leaping back to create distance while his hands continued preparing explosives. We've already extracted most of the One-Tail. The Kazekage is as good as dead, yeah? No, Naruto replied, his voice carrying an otherworldly resonance as he placed a hand on Gaara's chest. Golden chakra flowed from him into the unconscious Kazekage, forming intricate patterns across the redhead's body. Shikaku's chakra is still present in the chamber, not yet fully absorbed by your statue. I can redirect it. The assembled Akatsuki members watched in disbelief as tendrils of Naruto's chakra extended throughout the cavern, gathering the dispersed energy of the One-Tail and channeling it back into Gaara's body. The process created a visible transformation in the Kazekage, color returning to his pallid features, the weakened seal on his abdomen restructuring itself into a more stable configuration. This is beyond standard Jinchuriki abilities, Pain observed, genuine surprise evident even through his projection. He's reconstructing a tailed beast seal while simultaneously redirecting extracted Bijou chakra. The level of control required should be impossible. Forget analysis. Kill him, Sasori rasped, launching a barrage of poison-tipped Senbon from his puppet's arm mechanism. The needles never reached their target. Without looking up from his work with Gaara, Naruto extended one chakra tail, creating a defensive barrier that not only blocked the projectiles but disintegrated them on contact. You'll need to do better than that, Naruto said calmly, completing the chakra redirection. As Gaara's eyes fluttered open, confusion giving way to recognition, Naruto helped him to a sitting position. Rest for a moment. Your chakra network has been severely disrupted, but I've stabilized it. Naruto, Gaara's voice was weak but conscious. How did you? Explanations later, Naruto replied, turning to face the remaining Akatsuki members as his chakra cloak intensified. First, I need to deal with these guys. Deidara, recognizing the threat level had increased exponentially, launched his strongest attack, a massive C3 dragon designed to obliterate the entire cavern. Art is an explosion, he shouted as the clay construct detonated with enough force to collapse the mountain above them. The expected devastation never materialized. Instead, The explosive chakra seemed to bend toward Naruto, swirling around his extended hand before being compressed into a sphere of concentrated energy no larger than a marble. "Impressive output," Naruto commented, studying the compressed explosion he now held between two fingers. "But poorly executed. Your chakra control lacks precision, which creates exploitable inefficiencies in your techniques." With a casual flick, he sent the compressed energy sphere back toward Deidara. The resulting explosion was focused and directed, blasting a perfect hole through the Akatsuki member's shoulder while leaving everything else untouched. "Ow!" Deidara gasped, staggering back with a hand pressed to his wound. "That's not possible. It's basic chakra manipulation," Naruto replied, his tone almost educational. "Your explosions convert chakra into kinetic and thermal energy, following predictable transformation patterns. Once understood, those patterns can be reversed, compressed, and redirected." Pain, observing through his projection, made a swift decision. "Retreat," he ordered. "We've lost the advantage. Sasori, Deidara, disengage and rendezvous at the secondary location." "Running away?" Naruto asked, his enhanced senses detecting the subtle chakra fluctuations that preceded their departure techniques. "That's probably wise. But before you go," with blinding speed, he crossed the chamber to where Pain's projection flickered, his hand passing directly through the holographic form, but somehow disrupting the chakra frequency that maintained it. As the projection destabilized, Naruto locked eyes with the Rinnegan user. "Tell Nagato that the student of Jiraiya sends his regards," he said quietly, "and that we need to talk about what really happened to the Uzumaki clan." Pain's normally impassive expression showed a flicker of genuine shock before his projection collapsed entirely. The remaining Akatsuki members, recognizing they were outmatched, executed emergency evacuation techniques, leaving behind only Gaara and Naruto in the now quiet cavern. "You know their leader's true identity," Gaara observed as Naruto helped him to his feet, the golden chakra cloak receding until only a subtle aura remained around the Konoha shinobi. "Kurama has encountered the Rinnegan before," Naruto explained, "and there are very few Uzumaki descendants who survive the destruction of Uzushiobikure. Patterns become obvious when you have access to 1,000 years of historical context." Before they could continue their conversation, the rest of the rescue team arrived, clearly prepared for battle, but finding only a secure cavern with 2 healthy Jinchuriki. "What happened?" Kakashi demanded, Sharingan exposed and scanning for threats. "We felt a massive chakra surge, then nothing. The Akatsuki members retreated," Naruto replied simply. "I was able to interrupt their extraction process and restore Shikaku's chakra to Gaara." Elder Chiyo, who had accompanied the team, approached with wide, disbelieving eyes. "That should be impossible," she stated, her extensive knowledge of sealing jutsu making her particularly aware of the unprecedented nature of what had occurred. Once extraction begins, only the death of the Jinchuriki or a life transfer technique should be possible outcomes. Traditional sealing paradigms have limitations that can be overcome with sufficient understanding of chakra flow principles, Naruto responded, the technical nature of his explanation clearly influenced by Kurama's ancient knowledge. Seeing the confusion on some faces, he simplified, "I found a loophole in the extraction process." As they journeyed back to Sunagakure, Naruto maintained close proximity to Gaara, occasionally placing a hand on the Kazekage's shoulder to transfer small amounts of stabilizing chakra. To most observers, it appeared to be a gesture of friendship, but Gaara understood the deeper purpose. "You've modified my seal," he said quietly when they had a moment of privacy. "I can feel the difference. Shikaku is still present, but calmer somehow." Naruto nodded. "The original seal was flawed, designed for containment, but not harmony. I've adjusted it to create a more balanced chakra exchange. With time and effort, you might be able to achieve the same kind of partnership I have with Kurama." "You've fully synchronized with the Nine Tails," Gaara observed. Not a question, but a statement of recognized fact. Something considered impossible in all recorded history of Jinchuriki. "Not impossible," Naruto corrected with a small smile. "Just unprecedented. The tailed beasts were never meant to be weapons or tools. They were created as partners for humanity by the Sage of Six Paths. We've simply forgotten that original purpose over the centuries. The successful rescue of the Kazekage created ripples that extended far beyond the immediate diplomatic goodwill between Konoha and Suna. Word spread quickly through the shinobi intelligence networks about an Akatsuki operation thwarted by a single Konoha shinobi. Details vague but impact undeniable. Upon their return to Konoha, Naruto was immediately summoned to a private meeting with Tsunade. The Hokage studied him with a medical professional's eye, noting the subtle but profound changes in his chakra network and physical presence. "Jiraiya warned me," she said finally, leaning back in her chair. "But seeing it firsthand is another matter entirely. You've achieved perfect Jinchuriki status, something previously considered theoretical." Naruto nodded, standing respectfully before her desk. It required a complete restructuring of the 8 trigram seal and a fundamental change in how Kurama and I interact. "Kurama," Tsunade repeated, recognizing the significance of using the Nine-Tails' true name. "And this partnership gives you access to his full power and knowledge." "Yes," Naruto confirmed. "But more importantly, it provides perspective. Kurama has witnessed the rise and fall of each shinobi era, observed the pattern of conflict from a position outside human political structures. That perspective is proving as valuable as the raw power." Tsunade's expression grew serious. "This changes our strategic position significantly, particularly regarding the Akatsuki threat. But it also creates new complexities. The other nations will react strongly once they realize what you've become, which is why I've been careful about how much I reveal," Naruto replied. "The demonstration in rescuing Gaara was necessary given the time constraints, but I've otherwise maintained a moderate profile." "Strategic thinking," Tsunade observed with approval. "Another new development, a necessary one," Naruto acknowledged. "Power without strategy is just destructive potential. To create actual change, both are required." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a messenger. New intelligence regarding Sasuke Uchiha had been received. A source indicated that Orochimaru was planning to transfer into Sasuke's body within the next few weeks, creating an urgent timeline for any potential intervention. This intelligence led to the formation of a reconnaissance mission centered on Tenchi Bridge, where one of Sasori's spies within Orochimaru's organization was scheduled to deliver information. Team Kakashi, temporarily restructured to include Yamato as captain and Sai from the Foundation as a replacement for the injured Kakashi, was assigned the mission. As they traveled toward the rendezvous point, Naruto maintained a quiet, observant presence, particularly regarding Sai. The pale young man's carefully maintained emotional blankness registered to Naruto's enhanced perception as a deliberately constructed facade, not the absence of feelings, but their systematic suppression. "You're watching me," Sai observed during their second evening of travel, his fake smile firmly in place. "Is there something about me that interests you?" "Your chakra signature has been artificially modified," Naruto replied directly, seeing no value in pretense. "There's a seal formation at the base of your tongue that restricts certain forms of communication. And your emotional responses show patterns consistent with extensive conditioning rather than natural development." The fake smile froze on Sai's face, genuine surprise breaking through his conditioned blankness. "How could you possibly know about the seal?" "I can sense its chakra disrupting your natural flow," Naruto explained simply. "Just as I can sense that you're carrying 2 missions, the official one with our team, and another that you believe takes precedence." Sakura, overhearing this exchange, approached with concern. "What are you talking about, Naruto? What second mission?" "Ask him about the orders he received from Danzo," Naruto suggested, his tone remaining conversational despite the tension suddenly permeating their camp. Yamato, who had been monitoring the interaction from nearby, moved closer with deliberate casualness that didn't quite mask his readiness for conflict. "That's a serious accusation, Naruto." Foundation operatives answered directly to the Hokage. "Officially, yes," Naruto agreed. "But Danzo maintains his own agenda, often at cross-purposes with the Hokage's directives. The seal on Sai's tongue isn't standard ANBU protocol. It's specific to root operatives and designed to prevent disclosure of Danzo's unauthorized operations." Throughout this exchange, Sai's expression had gradually shifted from practiced blankness to genuine uncertainty. "How do you know these things?" he asked quietly. This information is restricted even within the Foundation. Let's just say I have access to historical context that most don't, Naruto replied, his eyes briefly shifting to their slitted form. Including the original purpose of Root under the second Hokage and how Danzo has modified that mandate over the decades. Before the conversation could continue, Naruto suddenly stiffened, his attention turning sharply westward. "We have company," he announced. Two chakra signatures approaching rapidly. One is Kabuto Yakushi, but significantly modified from his previous baseline. The other is... He trailed off, his expression becoming intensely focused. "Orochimaru," he concluded, "but there's something wrong with his chakra signature. It's destabilized, flickering between multiple patterns as if his form is failing to maintain coherence." You can sense that level of detail from this distance, Yamato asked, unable to hide his amazement. Instead of answering, Naruto turned aside. "Whatever secondary mission Danzo gave you involving Orochimaru or Sasuke, now's the time to decide where your true loyalties lie. Because in about 3 minutes, we're going to be engaged with opponents who won't care about Foundation politics." The confrontation that followed at Tenchi Bridge demonstrated a level of tactical coordination that left even Yamato impressed. Rather than rushing headlong into battle as the old Naruto might have done, especially with Sasuke potentially nearby, the transformed Jinchuriki orchestrated their approach with strategic precision. "Sakura, maintain position at the eastern edge of the bridge. Your medical skills will be critical if Kabuto employs his cellular disruption techniques," Naruto directed calmly. "Yamato, your wood release provides our best containment option against Orochimaru's mobility." Sigh. He turned to the Foundation member who had made the surprising choice to reveal Danzo's orders. "Your ink creatures can provide aerial reconnaissance without risking direct engagement." "And you?" Yamato asked, still adjusting to taking tactical suggestions from someone technically his subordinate on this mission. "I'll be the primary engagement force," Naruto replied, already beginning to radiate subtle golden chakra. "My abilities provide the best counter to Orochimaru's techniques." When they confronted Orochimaru on the bridge, the Sannin's initial mockery quickly transformed into genuine interest as he observed Naruto's controlled power and tactical approach. My, the snake Sannin commented, his unnaturally long tongue flicking out to taste the air. "You've grown in unexpected ways, Naruto-kun. That chakra, you've achieved synchronization with the Nine Tails, haven't you? Fascinating. Your body is failing," Naruto observed in return, his slitted eyes tracking the subtle tremors in Orochimaru's form. "The cellular rejection rate has accelerated beyond your ability to suppress it. You're running out of time before transfer becomes necessary." Orochimaru's eyes narrowed, genuine surprise visible before being masked by his typical arrogance. "Such detailed analysis from a mere genin? Perhaps I've been pursuing the wrong Konoha shinobi all this time. Where is Sasuke?" Naruto asked directly, golden chakra now visibly flowing across his skin but still contained, not yet forming the full cloak. "Closer than you might think," Orochimaru replied with a sinister smile. "But reaching him will require getting through me first." The battle that followed revealed the extraordinary growth in Naruto's combat capabilities. When Orochimaru unleashed his triple Rashomon gates to block a combined attack from Yamato and Sakura, Naruto simply placed his hand against the massive structure. Golden chakra spread from his palm across the ancient summoning, causing the demonic faces carved into the gates to contort before the entire construction dissolved into base chakra that Naruto absorbed effortlessly. "Impossible," Kabuto muttered, adjusting his glasses nervously. "He just unmade a summoning technique of that magnitude." "Not impossible," Naruto corrected, his voice carrying the dual resonance of human and bijou. "Just a matter of understanding the fundamental chakra patterns that maintain the technique's coherence. Once identified, those patterns can be disrupted." When Orochimaru resorted to his true form, the massive white snake composed of countless smaller serpents, Naruto's response demonstrated both overwhelming power and precise control. Rather than engaging the monstrous creation directly, he created a perfect-tailed beast bomb the size of an apple, its destructive potential compressed to an unprecedented density. "Compressed Bijou Dama," he announced calmly, the swirling black and white sphere hovering above his palm. Focused rather than explosive, the difference between a scalpel and a hammer. With pinpoint accuracy, he launched the technique directly at the junction point, where Orochimaru's consciousness maintained control over the collective snake form. The resulting impact didn't create a massive explosion, but instead carved a surgical path through the Sannin's defenses, disrupting the chakra network that maintained his transformed state. As Orochimaru's form collapsed, reverting to his humanoid appearance with signs of accelerated cellular degradation, Naruto approached the weakened Sannin with purpose. "Where is Sasuke?" he demanded again, golden chakra now forming a partial cloak around his body. Before Orochimaru could answer, a new presence made itself known, a cold, controlled chakra signature that Naruto recognized instantly despite its evolution over the years. "I'm right here." Sasuke's voice came from above them, the last Uchiha standing on a cliff overlooking the bridge. His appearance had matured, his chakra signature stronger, but also somehow colder, more precisely controlled. "Sasuke," Naruto acknowledged, his tone betraying no surprise. "I sense you watching the entire exchange, testing my capabilities before deciding whether to reveal yourself." A flicker of something, perhaps surprise at being so thoroughly read, crossed Sasuke's typically impassive features before being suppressed. "I was curious about how much you've changed," he admitted. "You're not the same impulsive idiot who charged into every fight without thinking. And you're not the same revenge-obsessed genin who left the village," Naruto replied. "Your chakra has evolved, more controlled, less corrupted by Orochimaru's influence. You've been systematically purging his cells from your system while still utilizing the knowledge he's provided." This accurate assessment clearly caught Sasuke off guard. His Sharingan activated reflexively, studying Naruto with new intensity. "Your chakra, it's changed completely. The Nine Tails is no longer suppressed within you." "Kurama," Naruto corrected. "His name is Kurama. And you're right, we've achieved complete synchronization. Perfect Jinchuriki state." "Kurama," Sasuke repeated, testing the unfamiliar name. "You're on a first-name basis with the demon that nearly destroyed our village?" "History is more complex than the Academy textbook suggests," Naruto replied. "The attack 16 years ago was orchestrated by an Uchiha manipulating Kurama through a specialized Sharingan technique. Something your brother could explain better than I could." The mention of Itachi caused Sasuke's expression to harden. "You know nothing about my brother or the Uchiha." "I know more than you might expect," Naruto countered calmly, "including the truth about the massacre, that it was ordered by Konoha's elders after your clan planned a coup, and that Itachi chose to become a villain in the eyes of the village to spare you and prevent full-scale war." The color drained from Sasuke's face, shock momentarily overwhelming his carefully maintained composure. That's a lie. Who told you such nonsense?" "No one needed to tell me," Naruto replied. "Kurama witnessed the tensions building between the Uchiha and the village leadership for years before the massacre. The patterns were clear to an outside observer with no stake in the political conflicts. Your clan was systematically marginalized after being falsely implicated in Kurama's attack, leading to growing resentment and eventually plans for a coup that would have resulted in civil war." Sasuke's hand moved to his sword, his entire body trembling with barely contained emotion. "You expect me to believe the Nine Tails somehow knew classified village secrets? Tailed beasts aren't mindless chakra constructs," Naruto explained, maintaining his calm despite the escalating tension. "They're sentient beings who have observed human civilization for centuries." Kurama was sealed within Uzumaki hosts who serve as advisors to 3 Hokages. He witnessed every major political decision in Konoha's history, including the growing isolation of the Uchiha clan and the eventual orders given to Itachi. Their conversation was interrupted by Orochimaru's strained laughter from the bridge below. "Such delicious drama," the Sannin commented despite his weakened state. The last Uchiha learning his entire life's purpose might be based on a misunderstanding. How tragically ironic. Sasuke's attention snapped to his supposed mentor, Sharingan spinning with dangerous intensity. Did you know about this?" "Fragments," Orochimaru admitted with a dismissive gesture. Enough to suspect the official story had significant omissions. "But unlike our friend there, I don't have a 1,000-year-old chakra entity providing historical context." For a moment, it seemed Sasuke might attack Orochimaru, his hand tightening on his sword hilt. But after a visible internal struggle, he regained his composure. I need time to process this, he stated flatly, and to verify these claims independently. You won't find official documentation, Naruto warned. This was handled outside normal protocols between Danzo, the third Hokage, and the elders. But there are ways to confirm what I've told you, such as ask Itachi directly, Naruto suggested. He's currently operating within Akatsuki while secretly still protecting Konoha's interests. Or examine the Uchiha stone tablet in the underground shrine. They'll be aware it was modified by Madara Uchiha to manipulate readers without fully awakened Sharingan. Sasuke's expression became unreadable, his mind clearly racing to integrate this paradigm-shifting information. After a long moment, he sheathed his sword. Our confrontation will have to wait, he decided. I have research to conduct. With that cryptic statement, he disappeared in a burst of speed that even Naruto's enhanced perception registered as impressive. The remaining Team Kakashi members moved to pursue, but Naruto raised a hand to stop them. Let him go, he advised. He needs to verify what I've told him, and forcing a confrontation now would only reinforce his existing beliefs. You just let our primary mission objective walk away, Yamato observed, though his tone held more curiosity than criticism. The mission objective was reconnaissance regarding Orochimaru and Sasuke, Naruto corrected. We've gathered critical intelligence about both, including the fact that Sasuke has been systematically building independence from Orochimaru's influence rather than submitting to it. That's valuable information for the Hokage, as they secured the weakened Orochimaru for transport back to Konoha, a task made possible by Naruto's application of specialized chakra suppression technique. Sakura approached her teammate with obvious concern. Everything you told Sasuke about Itachi and the massacre, she said quietly. Was that really true, or a strategic lie to create doubt? It was true, Naruto confirmed soberly. One of the darkest secrets in Konoha's history, a symptom of the fundamental flaws in how the village system handles internal conflict. The cycle of hatred doesn't just exist between villages. It's woven into the structure of our own society. This revelation, combined with the capture of a severely weakened Orochimaru, created significant ripples upon their return to Konoha. Tsunade immediately classified much of the information about Itachi's true role, but the seed of truth had been planted, not just with Sasuke, but within Konoha's own leadership, forcing a re-examination of policies dating back to the second Hokage's era. The next major challenge emerged sooner than expected. Intelligence reports indicated that an Akatsuki team consisting of Haiden and Kakuzu had entered Fire Country with unknown objectives. When further information revealed they were targeting Asuma Sarutobi and his team, Naruto immediately requested permission to join the response force. This isn't just about protecting fellow Konoha shinobi, he explained to Tsunade during the mission briefing. Haiden and Kakuzu represent a unique opportunity to gather intelligence about Akatsuki's internal structure and long-term objectives. Tsunade studied him thoughtfully. Your strategic thinking continues to evolve at an impressive rate. Very well. You'll join Shikamaru's team as tactical support, with authorization to engage at your discretion. The interception of the Akatsuki pair demonstrated another aspect of Naruto's transformation, his ability to coordinate perfectly with teammates through distributed chakra links. As they located Asuma's team already engaged in combat with the immortal Haiden, Naruto quickly assessed the situation. Shikamaru, Ino, Choji, I'm going to share a portion of Kurama's chakra with each of you, he explained rapidly. It won't increase your raw power significantly, but will create a sensory network allowing us to coordinate without verbal communication. The golden chakra he extended to each team member created an immediate effect, their movements becoming more synchronized, their tactical awareness expanding beyond individual perspectives to a shared understanding of the battlefield. Haiden, in the midst of preparing his ritual sacrifice technique using blood collected from Asuma, found his ceremony interrupted by a precise kunai throw that shouldn't have been possible from Shikamaru's angle and distance. How the hell? The immortal Akatsuki member cursed, his ritual circle disrupted. That shadow brat shouldn't have been able to make that throw. Coordinated attack patterns. Kakuzu observed with cold analysis, his multiple hearts pulsing within his stitched body. The Jinchuriki is sharing sensory data somehow. Naruto's approach to the immortal duo demonstrated his tactical evolution. Rather than engaging directly with overwhelming force, he coordinated a precision strategy that exploited their specific weaknesses. Haiden's immortality depends on Jashin's blessing, which in turn requires precise ritual parameters. He explained to the chakra network connecting the team. Disrupt the ritual, separate him from his scythe, and his offensive capabilities decrease dramatically. For Kakuzu, the approach was equally analytical. 5 hearts, each with a different chakra nature. They can operate independently or in concert, but they all connect back to his primary chakra network through tendrils that can be severed with wind nature chakra applied with sufficient precision. This strategic dismantling of supposedly immortal opponents prevented the tragedy that might have occurred without Naruto's intervention. Asuma, though injured, survived the encounter, while both Akatsuki members were neutralized. Haiden sealed in a specialized containment scroll developed based on Naruto's knowledge of Jashinism, and Kakuzu's heart systematically destroyed by precisely targeted Raisen Shuriken techniques. You've become quite the strategist, Shikamaru observed as they secured the battlefield. That was some seriously advanced tactical thinking. Experience helps, Naruto replied with a small smile. Both mine and others. The captured Akatsuki members provided valuable intelligence, particularly regarding the organization's financial structure. Information that would prove crucial in disrupting their operations beyond simply defeating individual members. But more significant was the growing recognition among Konoha's leadership of Naruto's evolution from unpredictable genin to strategic asset. This recognition led to his inclusion in the planning for what became known as the Itachi Pursuit Mission. Intelligence suggested that Sasuke was moving to confront his brother, creating both danger and opportunity in equal measure. Itachi is dying, Naruto informed the assembled Jonin during the mission planning session, his matter-of-fact statement creating immediate silence in the room. What do you mean? Kakashi asked, his visible eye narrowing. He's suffering from a progressive illness that his medication is barely managing, Naruto explained. Based on his chakra fluctuations during our previous encounters and information from Jiraiya's network, he has months at most. This explains why he's allowing Sasuke to find him now. He's creating a controlled scenario for their confrontation. How could you possibly know the details of his medical condition? One of the other Jonin demanded skeptically. Kurama's sensory abilities include detecting cellular degradation patterns in chakra networks. Naruto replied simply. Itachi's show advanced deterioration consistent with autoimmune disorders common in dojutsu users who overutilize their abilities. This insight fundamentally changed their approach to the mission. Rather than simply pursuing Sasuke to prevent his confrontation with Itachi, they developed a more nuanced strategy aimed at monitoring the encounter while preparing to intervene only if absolutely necessary. Itachi has been operating as an unofficial deep cover asset for years. Naruto explained to the smaller group that included only Kakashi, Yamato, and Tsunade herself. His actions within Akatsuki have repeatedly sabotaged their operations against Konoha. If we intervene prematurely, we risk exposing this arrangement and potentially turning Sasuke further against the village. You're suggesting we allow 2 S-rank missing Nin to battle it out and simply observe? Tsunade asked, though her tone suggested she already understood the strategic reasoning. I'm suggesting we position ourselves to ensure the truth emerges from their confrontation, Naruto clarified. Itachi wants Sasuke to kill him, to die by his brother's hand while still being seen as the villain. That perpetuates the lie. Our goal should be to ensure Sasuke learns the truth about the massacre from Itachi himself, creating an opportunity for reconciliation with Konoha. The pursuit team, consisting of Naruto, Kakashi, Sakura, and Sai, now firmly aligned with Team Kakashi rather than Root, move with unprecedented coordination thanks to Naruto's chakra-sharing technique. Their strategic positioning allowed them to monitor the brothers' confrontation without immediately revealing their presence. The battle between Sasuke and Itachi unfolded with all the intensity expected from such long-brewing hatred. Their Jinjutsu and Ninjutsu exchanges reaching levels that few shinobi in history could match. But as Naruto observed through his enhanced senses, he detected the careful restraint in Itachi's movements, the deliberate openings left for Sasuke to exploit, the techniques chosen to test rather than destroy. He's guiding Sasuke, Naruto observed quietly to his team as they maintained their observation position. This entire battle is choreographed to push Sasuke to his limits, while ensuring he ultimately prevails. When Itachi finally cornered Sasuke, appearing to reach for his eyes in a final attempt to take his brother's Sharingan, Naruto sensed the subtle chakra fluctuation that indicated something entirely different was happening. As Itachi's fingers pressed against Sasuke's forehead in what seemed like a threatening gesture, Naruto detected the transfer of concentrated chakra, a final gift from brother to brother. Now, Naruto decided, signaling the team to move in as Itachi collapsed, his life force fading rapidly. Their arrival in the aftermath of the battle created a moment of extraordinary tension. Sasuke, exhausted and emotionally devastated, reacted with immediate hostility until Naruto raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "We're not here to fight," he assured his former teammate. "We're here because there are things you need to know, things Itachi wanted you to know, but couldn't tell you directly. Stay back," Sasuke warned, though his depleted chakra made the threat largely empty. "I've just killed the man who destroyed our clan. Nothing you can say matters now, except that he didn't destroy your clan on his own initiative," came a new voice from the shadows. "He did it on orders from Konoha." The masked figure who emerged identified himself as Madara Uchiha, a claim that Naruto immediately recognized as partially false through Kurama's ancient memories. "You're not Madara," Naruto stated flatly, golden chakra beginning to emanate from his form. "You're Obito Uchiha, Kakashi's former teammate, thought dead during the Third Shinobi War." The masked man froze momentarily, his single visible eye widening behind his orange mask. "How could you possibly?" "Kurama remembers you," Naruto continued, his voice taking on the dual resonance of human and Bijou. "He remembers you controlling him 16 years ago, using a specialized Sharingan technique to force him to attack Konoha, just as he remembers the real Madara doing the same during his battle with the first Hokage." This revelation created a moment of profound silence, broken only by Sasuke's labored breathing as he looked between Naruto and the masked man claiming to be Madara. "Is this true?" Sasuke demanded of the masked figure. "Are you really Obito Uchiha? Did you help orchestrate the destruction of our clan?" Rather than answering directly, Obito turned his attention to Naruto. "You've achieved something remarkable with the Nine Tails," he observed, his tone shifting to clinical assessment. "Complete synchronization. That should be impossible given the fox's hatred for humanity." "Understanding transcends hatred," Naruto replied. "Something you seem to have forgotten, Obito. Your path since Rin's death has been built on a foundation of misguided vengeance and manipulation by actual enemies of humanity." The mention of Rin, Obito's childhood love whose death had triggered his descent into darkness, visibly affected the masked Uchiha. His posture stiffened, killing intent suddenly radiating from him with palpable force. "You know nothing about my path," he hissed, his Sharingan spinning menacingly. "I know more than you might expect," Naruto countered calmly, "including the fact that you're being used by Black Zetsu, a creation of Kaguya Otsutsuki designed to manipulate events toward her resurrection. Your entire Eye of the Moon plan is simply another step in Zetsu's 1,000-year manipulation of the Uchiha clan." This statement, delivered with the absolute certainty that came from Kurama's ancient knowledge, created visible shock even through Obito's mask. Before he could respond, Naruto turned to Sasuke. "Your brother was a loyal shinobi to the end, not to the corrupt elements within Konoha's leadership, but to the ideal of peace that the village was founded upon. He chose to bear the burden of villain to spare you and prevent civil war. Before you decide your path forward, you should understand the full truth of his sacrifice." The complex revelations of that day prevented an immediate confrontation with Obito, who retreated with promises to speak with Sasuke again when interference wasn't present. But more importantly, it created the first crack in Sasuke's single-minded pursuit of vengeance, forcing him to confront the possibility that his entire understanding of the massacre and his brother's role had been based on carefully constructed lies. As they recovered Itachi's body for transport back to Konoha, a decision Sasuke initially resisted but ultimately accepted as necessary for a proper Uchiha funeral, Naruto sensed a profound shift in his friend's chakra. The cold, controlled hatred that had defined Sasuke for years was now turbulent with uncertainty and grief far more complex than simple rage. "What will you do now?" Naruto asked quietly as they prepared to depart, the rest of the team giving them a moment of privacy. "I don't know," Sasuke admitted, his voice hollow with exhaustion and emotional overload. "Everything I've built my life around for the past 8 years might be based on manipulation and lies. I need clarity." "Then come back to Konoha," Naruto suggested. "Not as a prisoner or even necessarily as an active shinobi. Come back to access the records, to investigate properly, to find the truth for yourself." Sasuke's expression hardened slightly. "If what you've told me is true, then certain people in Konoha's leadership are responsible for ordering the destruction of my clan. I can't simply ignore that." "I'm not asking you to," Naruto clarified. "I'm asking you to pursue justice rather than blind vengeance. To understand the full context before deciding your path forward." After long consideration, Sasuke nodded once. Not full agreement, but a willingness to consider the proposal. That tentative reconnection, however, was interrupted by the arrival of a messenger toad from Mount Myaboku, bearing devastating news. Jiraiya had been killed while investigating pain in Amigakure. The loss of his mentor hit Naruto with a depth of grief that momentarily overwhelmed even his enhanced emotional stability. For the first time since achieving perfect Jinchuriki status, he felt something akin to rage threatening his composed exterior. "I need to go," he told his team, golden chakra already beginning to envelop his form. "Fukasaku-sama has information about pain that I need to review immediately." "Naruto," Kakashi began, concern evident in his voice. "Acting rashly out of grief." "I'm not acting rashly," Naruto interrupted, his voice steady despite the pain evident in his eyes. "I'm prioritizing intelligence, gathering before strategic response." Jiraiya gave his life to obtain critical information about Pain's abilities. Honoring that sacrifice means using that information effectively, not charging blindly into revenge. This measured response, despite his obvious grief, demonstrated the profound transformation in Naruto's approach to conflict. Rather than immediately pursuing Pain, he returned to Konoha with the team, spending days methodically analyzing Jiraiya's final intelligence report and integrating it with Kurama's observations from their previous encounter with Pain's projection. 6 bodies, all controlled by a primary operator named Nagato, he explained during the strategic planning session with Konoha's leadership. Each body possesses a different ability derived from the Rinnegan: absorption, attraction and repulsion, summoning, mechanization, interrogation, and resurrection. They share visual information through their linked Rinnegan, making traditional ambush tactics ineffective. "This level of detailed analysis is remarkable," Tsunade observed. "Combined with Jiraiya's intelligence, it gives us unprecedented insight into an S-rank threat." "Knowledge alone isn't enough," Naruto replied, his expression solemn. "Pain's abilities are formidable, but more concerning is his ideology. He's not simply a criminal organization leader. He's a revolutionary who believes he's creating peace through shared suffering. That makes him both more dangerous and potentially more approachable than a conventional enemy." "Approachable?" one of the council members questioned skeptically. "He killed Jiraiya and is hunting Jinchuriki. There's nothing to approach." "Nagato was once Jiraiya's student," Naruto countered. "He started as an idealist who experienced profound tragedy. Understanding his journey from Jiraiya's hopeful student to Akatsuki's leader provides insight into how we might reach him, not just defeat him." This nuanced approach to a deadly enemy represented Naruto's evolving perspective on conflict resolution, seeing beyond immediate tactical victory to address underlying causes. However, the opportunity to implement this approach came sooner and more dramatically than anyone anticipated. Just days after the strategic planning session, Pain launched a direct assault on Konoha. 6 bodies descended on the village simultaneously, their coordinated attacks devastating entire districts within minutes. As civilian evacuation procedures activated, Naruto emerged from Sage training with Fukasaku to find his home under attack. His response demonstrated the full spectrum of his evolution as a perfect Jinchuriki. Rather than immediately engaging Pain directly, he created hundreds of shadow clones enhanced with Kurama's chakra, dispatching them throughout the village to coordinate evacuation, provide medical support, and gather tactical information about each Pain body's capabilities. Through this distributed awareness, he developed a comprehensive understanding of the battlefield, while simultaneously supporting defensive operations. When he finally moved to engage pain directly, it was with complete strategic awareness and a clear approach for each body. The animal path relies on summoning techniques that can be disrupted by severing the chakra connection to the summoning realm. He explained to the defensive teams as he distributed portions of Kurama's chakra to key jonin. The Preta path absorbs ninjutsu, so engage with taijutsu or natural energy. The Naraka path must be isolated from the others to prevent resurrection of disabled bodies. This systematic approach, combined with his overwhelming power, allowed for the methodical neutralization of each pain body with minimal collateral damage to the already devastated village. When he finally confronted the Deva path, Pain's primary combat body, their battle transcended physical technique to include a profound philosophical exchange. "You speak of peace while destroying a village," Naruto observed, golden chakra cloak fully manifested as he stood amidst the rubble of Konoha. "How does this devastation serve your vision of a world without suffering? Understanding true pain is the only path to peace," Pain replied, his Rinnegan eyes cold yet somehow sorrowful. "Humanity learns only through suffering. I'm simply ensuring the lesson is properly taught." "I understand your pain, Nagato," Naruto responded, using the Akatsuki leader's true name. "The loss of your parents during war, the death of your friend Yahiko, the exploitation of Amage Cure by larger nations. But creating more suffering doesn't honor those losses. It perpetuates the cycle that caused them." Pain's expression shifted slightly, genuine surprise breaking through his typical impassivity. "You speak as if you know me, yet we have never truly met. But I know your teacher," Naruto replied, "and through him, I've come to understand your path." Jiraiya believed in a world where people could truly understand each other, where cycle of hatred could be broken. He entrusted that dream to both of us. Their philosophical debate continued even as their battle reached extraordinary levels of destructive potential. When Pain utilized his most powerful technique, planetary devastation, to create a miniature moon of compressed debris intended to trap and crush Naruto, the perfect Jinchuriki responded with a display of power that left even the Rinnegan user momentarily speechless. Combining Sage Mode with Kurama's chakra, Naruto created a counter technique that neither overwhelmed Pain's ability through raw force nor attempted to escape its gravitational pull. Instead, he harmonized his chakra with the gravitational field itself, creating a resonance pattern that allowed him to move freely within the technique's influence while simultaneously weakening its structural integrity. "Impossible," Pain murmured as his ultimate technique began to unravel from within. "You're not fighting against the gravitational field. You're becoming part of it and redirecting its flow. Force against force creates only destruction," Naruto replied, his voice carrying the dual resonance of Sage and Jinchuriki. Understanding the nature of a technique allows for harmonization rather than opposition. As the massive gravitational sphere collapsed around them, Naruto emerged unharmed, his golden chakra cloak still radiating with controlled power. Pain, recognizing the unprecedented nature of his opponent, made a decision that surprised even his fellow Akatsuki members monitoring the battle remotely. "I wish to speak with you directly," he stated, his primary body deactivating as he recalled his consciousness to his true form. "Not through this proxy, but as myself, as Nagato. Follow the chakra receiver's signal to my location." This invitation led Naruto to the hidden location where Nagato's true body resided. Emaciated, immobile, sustained by a complex life support system operated by his childhood friend Conan. There, among the mechanical apparatus that had kept him alive through years of physical deterioration, the true confrontation between Jiraiya's students took place. "You've surpassed him," Nagato observed, his real voice weak, but carrying the same conviction as his pain bodies. "Jiraiya never achieved the harmony with natural energy that you demonstrate, nor did he fully understand the tailed beasts as you clearly do." "I had advantages he didn't," Naruto acknowledged, "including the lessons he learned from teaching you. In many ways, your path helped shape mine, showing both possibilities and pitfalls." Their conversation expanded beyond tactical concerns to the fundamental philosophical questions that had driven both their journeys. The nature of peace, the cycle of hatred, the possibility of true understanding between people with different experiences of suffering. Through this exchange, supported by Kurama's ancient perspective, Naruto offered something Nagato had lost years before: hope that genuine change was possible without requiring universal suffering as its catalyst. Your approach has failed to create lasting peace despite decades of effort, Naruto observed without condemnation. Not because your diagnosis of the problem was wrong, but because your prescription couldn't address the root causes. Pain cannot be the foundation of genuine understanding. It can only create temporary alignment through shared fear. As their conversation continued, Naruto sensed the subtle shift in Nagato's chakra, the rigid patterns of conviction gradually becoming more fluid, more receptive to alternative perspectives. When he finally shared Jiraiya's original vision for his students, that they would find a way to break the cycle of hatred that had defined shinobi history, something fundamental changed in the Akatsuki leader's demeanor. Perhaps Nagato conceded with the weariness of someone who had carried an impossible burden for too long. I have been interpreting our master's teachings too narrowly. Pain alone cannot create understanding. It can only create the conditions for empathy to emerge if one chooses to see beyond their own suffering. This philosophical breakthrough led to an unprecedented outcome: Nagato's decision to use his Rinne rebirth technique to restore the lives lost during his attack on Konoha. This sacrifice, giving his remaining life force to undo the damage he had caused, represented the first major victory of Naruto's approach to conflict resolution. Rather than simply defeating pain, he had reconnected Nagato to the ideals that had originally driven him, creating transformation rather than merely destruction. As Nagato's life faded, his final words to Naruto carried both acknowledgement and challenge. The system that created both of us remains. Changing individuals may create moments of peace, but transforming the structure that produces conflict, that is the true test of Jiraiya's legacy. The aftermath of Pain's assault created a pivotal moment in shinobi history. Konoha, though physically devastated, had survived an attack by the most powerful Akatsuki member, and the previously mysterious leader had been neutralized not through superior force, but through philosophical engagement. This outcome, combined with the miraculous revival of those killed during the attack, elevated Naruto's status from valuable asset to legendary figure almost overnight. His return to the village after confronting Nagato became a spontaneous celebration, with civilians and shinobi alike lining the streets to welcome the person now being called Konoha's Orange Hokage, a title that acknowledged both his signature color and his emergence as the village's de facto leader in times of crisis. This new status created both opportunities and complications as the broader shinobi world responded to the changing power dynamics. When the Five Kage Summit was convened to address the Akatsuki threat, Tsunade insisted that Naruto accompany her as an advisor, a decision that raised eyebrows among the other villages but reflected the new reality of his strategic importance. "Your presence will be controversial," she warned as they prepared for the journey to the Land of Iron. The other Kage will see bringing a Jinchuriki to such a gathering as either a power play or a security risk. "It's both," Naruto acknowledged with the political awareness that had become part of his enhanced perspective. "But it also creates an opportunity for direct communication with the other villages about the nature of the true threat we're facing." The Akatsuki is merely a symptom of deeper instability in the shinobi world system, one that predates any of our villages. The summit itself became a demonstration of how profoundly Naruto had evolved as both a tactical operator and a strategic thinker. When Sasuke infiltrated the meeting location, apparently intent on confronting Danzo regarding the Uchiha massacre, Naruto sensed his approach long before any of the conventional security measures were triggered. "Sasuke is here," he informed Tsunade quietly during a break in the formal proceedings, along with a small team. Their chakra signatures suggest they're targeting Danzo specifically, not the summit as a whole. "Your sensory range is truly remarkable," the Hokage observed. "What do you recommend?" "Let me speak with him first," Naruto suggested. His emotional state is turbulent, but not yet committed to a specific course of action. There's an opportunity to prevent unnecessary conflict. This intervention created one of the most unexpected diplomatic developments of the summit. Rather than the chaos that might have ensued from Sasuke's revenge-driven attack, the gathered Kage witnessed something entirely different. A controlled confrontation between the last loyal Uchiha and the architect of his clan's destruction, mediated by Konoha's perfect Jinchuriki. Your actions regarding the Uchiha clan constitute unsanctioned operations outside the authorized command structure, Naruto stated formally, standing between Sasuke and Danzo in the auxiliary chamber where he had intercepted his friend. The Hokage has authorized me to offer Sasuke Uchiha full access to the classified records regarding the massacre, as well as immunity for his actions since leaving the village, in exchange for his return to Konoha service. You have no authority to make such offers, Danzo growled, his visible eye narrowed with barely contained fury. This is a direct undermining of Root's operational security. Root has been officially disbanded 3 times in Konoha's history, Naruto countered, his tone remaining measured despite the tension. Your continuation of its operations without Hokage authorization constitutes treason under Section 7 of the Village Charter. The only reason you're not being arrested immediately is the diplomatic complexity of doing so during a 5 Kage summit. This exchange, witnessed by the other Kage who had been drawn by the disturbance, created an unprecedented moment of transparency regarding one of Konoha's darkest secrets. Danzo's unauthorized operations, the manipulation of Itachi, the preventable tragedy of the Uchiha massacre, all became matters of international record rather than buried village secrets. For Sasuke, this public acknowledgement of the truth created something he had believed impossible, a path forward that honored his clan's memory without requiring him to become the very thing that had destroyed them. The formal apology from Tsunade as Hokage, combined with the commitment to full disclosure and reform, provided a foundation for reconciliation that no one had thought possible. The system that allowed this to happen still exists, Sasuke observed during the private conversation that followed the public confrontation. Not just in Konoha, but in all the hidden villages. Secret operations, manipulation, decisions made in shadows that cost innocent lives. You're right, Naruto acknowledged, which is why reform can't stop with addressing past injustices. The entire structure of how villages operate needs to evolve. This conversation planted the seeds for what would eventually become known as the Shinobi Union, a transparent governance framework that would eventually replace the secretive, competition-based system that had defined village relations for generations. But before that vision could be realized, a more immediate threat emerged in the form of Madara Uchiha's declaration of the Fourth Shinobi World War. The announcement, delivered by a transformed Zetsu during the closing session of the 5 Kage Summit, made explicit what Naruto had been warning about since his return from training with Jiraiya, that the Akatsuki's collection of tailed beasts was merely preparation for a larger plan involving the resurrection of the 10 Tails and implementation of the infinite Tsukuyomi. This confirms everything I've shared about the true nature of the threat. Naruto addressed the assembled Kage, who had swiftly moved from skepticism to strategic planning. This isn't merely about village security or even the protection of Jinchuriki. This is an existential threat to human autonomy itself. His explanation of the Eye of the Moon plan, supported by Kurama's ancient knowledge of its origins and true purpose, transformed the framework through which the Kage understood the conflict. Rather than another inter-village war with political objectives, they now recognized they were facing something unprecedented, a threat to the foundations of human free will itself. This shared understanding created the conditions for the first truly unified shinobi alliance in history. Rather than the temporary, suspicion-filled coalitions of previous wars, the response to Madara's declaration involved integrated command structures, shared intelligence, and coordinated strategic planning across all 5 major villages and numerous smaller ones. Naruto's role in this alliance reflected his evolution beyond conventional shinobi classifications. Neither general nor diplomat in the traditional sense. He became something entirely new. A strategic advisor whose perspective transcended village-specific interests to address the existential nature of the threat they faced. His most significant contribution during the preparation phase came in the form of what became known as the Bijou Diplomacy Initiative, direct outreach to the other tailed beasts and their Jinchuriki. Through Kurama's ability to communicate across vast distances with his siblings, Naruto established connections with the remaining Jinchuriki, creating both a warning network and the foundations for unprecedented cooperation. The tailed beasts were never meant to be weapons. he explained during a strategy session with the Alliance leadership. They were created by the Sage of Six Paths as guardians of natural energy and partners to humanity. Their current status as military assets is a perversion of their original purpose, one that makes them vulnerable to Madara's plan. This perspective shift regarding the tailed beasts fundamentally altered the Alliance's approach to their protection. Rather than simply securing the Jinchuriki as high-value assets, they began working with them as strategic partners, integrating their unique insights and abilities into the broader defensive framework. When the war finally erupted across multiple fronts, Naruto's evolved capabilities became central to the Alliance's response strategy. His ability to distribute portions of Kurama's chakra to thousands of shinobi simultaneously created an unprecedented coordination advantage, a network of enhanced soldiers who could communicate instantly across vast distances while benefiting from significant stamina and power boosts. But even more valuable than this power distribution was the strategic insight he provided. Through Kurama's ancient knowledge and his own tactical brilliance, Naruto identified vulnerabilities in Madara's approach that would have remained invisible to conventional military analysis. The Edo Tensei reanimations are powerful but fundamentally flawed, he explained to the assembled division commanders. They retain the personalities and emotional connections of the originals, creating exploitable psychological vulnerabilities. Additionally, the technique maintains a chakra link to its caster that can be traced and potentially severed. This insight led to the development of specialized countertactics for each reanimated shinobi, focusing not merely on combat suppression, but on addressing the emotional and psychological context that defined their original identities. For reanimated figures like Itachi Uchiha and the former Hokage, this approach created opportunities for alliance rather than simply confrontation. Naruto's direct confrontation with Madara and Obito on the war's main battlefield demonstrated the full spectrum of his evolution as a perfect Jinchuriki. Beyond the raw power that allowed him to match even Madara's legendary abilities, his approach revealed a strategic depth that repeatedly caught the ancient Uchiha off guard. "You fight differently than any Jinchuriki I've encountered," Madara observed during a momentary pause in their devastating exchange of techniques. "Not with the raw hatred that typically defines your kind, but with a precision that suggests something more. We fight as equals," Naruto replied, the "we" clearly referring to himself and Kurama, not as prisoner and jailer, not as weapon and wielder, but as partners with a shared purpose. This fundamental difference in perspective became increasingly significant as the conflict evolved from conventional battle to a multi-dimensional struggle involving the Ten Tails, the resurrected Sage of Six Paths, and ultimately Kaguya Otsutsuki herself. Throughout these escalating confrontations, Naruto maintained a strategic approach that balanced overwhelming power with precise application, always seeking to understand and address root causes rather than merely overcome immediate obstacles. His most significant moment came not during the final sealing of Kaguya, impressive as that joint technique with Sasuke was, but in the aftermath, when the two most powerful shinobi in history found themselves facing each other across the Valley of the End, the same location where they had fought years before. "Nothing has changed," Sasuke declared, his Rinnegan and Sharingan activated as he faced his friend. "The system that destroyed my clan, that manipulated both of us, that created endless cycles of hatred and violence, it remains intact. The only way to truly change it is to concentrate power in a single vision, a single ruler who can force peace through absolute control." "Everything has changed," Naruto countered, golden chakra flowing around him not as battle preparation, but as a manifestation of his conviction. "Look at what we've accomplished together. Not just you and I, but all the villages, all the diverse perspectives that contributed to our victory. True strength comes from harmony among differences, not from imposing a single vision." Their final battle transcended mere physical confrontation to become a philosophical debate expressed through combat. Each technique not simply an attempt to defeat the other, but to demonstrate the validity of their worldview. Sasuke's perfect Susanoo embodied his belief in protective isolation and overwhelming individual power, while Naruto's most evolved Kurama mode represented the strength found in perfect partnership and cooperation. When they finally stood exhausted, both missing an arm, bleeding but unbowed, Sasuke asked the question that had defined their relationship since childhood. Why do you keep fighting for me? Why refuse to give up even when I've given you every reason to? Because that's what it means to be connected, Naruto replied simply. Not just to one person, but to everything. Kurama has shown me a perspective that spans centuries. How brief our lives are, how lasting our impact can be. The choices we make don't just affect us or even our generation. They shape the foundation for everything that follows. Breaking the cycle means refusing to let go, especially when it would be easier to give up. This profound exchange, followed by Sasuke's reluctant but genuine acknowledgement of Naruto's perspective, marked the true conclusion of the Fourth Shinobi World War. Not the sealing of Kaguya or the defeat of Madara, but the reconciliation between two philosophical approaches that had been in conflict since the founding of the Hidden Village system itself. The years that followed saw the implementation of the vision that had gradually formed through Naruto's experiences, a fundamental restructuring of the shinobi world based not on military deterrence and economic competition, but on transparent cooperation and shared prosperity. The Shinobi Union, formalized in the peace accords that followed the war, created mechanisms for inter-village collaboration that transcended the traditional boundaries of competitive national interests. When Naruto finally assumed the position of Hokage, 5 years after the war's conclusion, he did so as part of a transformed understanding of what leadership meant in this new era. Rather than simply being the strongest defender and decision-maker for Konoha, he became a coordinator of perspectives, a bridge between traditional approaches and emerging possibilities. His perfect synchronization with Kurama, once considered impossible and potentially apocalyptic, became the model for a new approach to Jinchuriki across all villages. The tailed beasts, gradually released from their roles as weapons of mass destruction, began to resume something closer to their original purpose as guardians of natural energy and bridges between humanity and the more primordial forces of the world. Perhaps most significantly, the knowledge Naruto gained through his connection with Kurama, the understanding of how cycles of conflict had repeated throughout shinobi history, allowed him to identify and address systemic vulnerabilities before they could develop into new threats. Problems that might have festered into wars in previous generations were resolved through diplomatic innovation and collaborative problem-solving, creating the longest period of genuine peace the shinobi world had ever known. We've come further than I ever imagined possible, Kurama observed during one of their internal conversations, years into Naruto's tenure as Hokage. The fox's perspective, once defined by cynicism born from centuries of witnessing human failure, had gradually evolved to cautious optimism. Though the potential for conflict remains part of human nature. That's why this isn't an endpoint, but a process, Naruto replied, his internal voice carrying the wisdom acquired through decades of leadership. Peace isn't something you achieve once and maintain statically. It's something you create anew each day through choices and connections. This understanding, that true transformation comes not from imposing perfect solutions, but from creating systems that can evolve and adapt to emerging challenges, became Naruto's most lasting legacy. Not the battles won or enemies defeated, impressive as those were, but the framework established for addressing problems collaboratively rather than competitively. The young boy who had once dreamed of becoming Hokage to gain acknowledgement had evolved into something far more significant. A leader whose greatest strength lay not in his extraordinary power, but in his capacity to understand, connect, and transform the very foundations of how people related to each other. The perfect Jinchuriki, it turned out, was not merely a warrior of unprecedented ability, but a bridge between perspectives that had seemed irreconcilable throughout shinobi history. As new generations emerged, growing up in a world where village boundaries represented administrative convenience rather than military necessity, the full impact of Naruto's transformation became increasingly apparent. The symbiosis he had achieved with Kurama, once considered impossible, became a metaphor for the broader harmony possible between elements previously seen as fundamentally opposed. Tradition and innovation, individual ambition and collective welfare, diverse perspectives and unified purpose. In this way, what had begun as a desperate seal placed by a dying Hokage to save his village became the foundation for a transformation that none could have anticipated. The evolution from endless cycles of conflict to the possibility of lasting peace built not on dominance, but on understanding that transcended the limitations of any single perspective.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, consider subscribing. More coming soon, here on Quietly.